you're done. You want to do that? Like seriously,
Hey,
nobody
we
can even
protest. This is
seriously.
not good.
They can't even
We don't
seriously
like
even
it.
consider that. It's just like that's suicide. That's literally like this political suicide is actual like you don't want to live anymore. Yeah, you can't even be homeless. In China, you cannot even be homeless
Right.
because they will take care of you basically. Like we'll force you into we give you food, we give you money, we give you whatever, but just don't be homeless. This is why the world are controlled by the elites, basically. A small group of people who holds all the financial and political levers.
That's not how we use words. You don't consider yourself to be anything. You either are something or you're not. The book is either of red color or it's of green color. You know that African meme, like, corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
Right.
But if I'm involved, I defend it. And when you have a whole cluster of a generation, of a culture, and of a society just check out like that, it's like, no, I want things this way. Yeah, but look around you. We can't have this right now. This is a different time and a different world.
God damn it. Bro, you just went upping this shit, eh? Bro, you gotta save some for some special occasions, man. You can't just like one up every session. That's not good.
Why not?
How many costumes do you got, man?
Infinite amount, dude.
Jesus Christ.
Imagination is limitless.
All right, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, what is going on?
Like, come on, man. My life is boring. What's in the water over there, man? Like, what's going on? You're having too much fun. That's not allowed.
No, I woke up like this. And then I
Come
just,
on, you gotta leave some for the rest of us, man. Come on, man. Used up all the fun energy already.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It just comes to me. It's like, it's now it's this guy. Now it's this guy takes the stage. But really, like I realized that, I mean, I know nothing about acting, but through this Barry show, I was like, I was thinking a lot about acting. I was like, yeah, it is like really fun of an idea because you can get to create these characters and then
Yeah.
like to develop them, to imagine how they would talk, it's a whole range. So like I'm not doing the voice yet, so that because
Doing the
that
voice.
that seems like crazy, like to do a voice, like go full Robert Downey Jr. I don't drop the character till I do the DVD commentary.
Yeah.
It's just to stay in that space. It seems very strange to me. I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do that yet.
It's definitely a mind. I don't know. For an everyday person to think about that, it's just like, wow, that's a mind.
Yeah, you kind of do become a different person, like, because you have to, even if you imagine or whatever you're calling this, you're still behaving like it takes a lot of effort and concentration to
Yeah.
talk with like imagine
And
talking with a specific accent for like hours on end. That's
yeah, it's like
crazy.
it must feel weird. It's like, okay, I gotta pretend this and I gotta do it right? It's like every single thing has to kind of fit into that role, where that person is from, their accent and kind of mentality and all that. Like, yeah, great actors, like they can actually become a whole different person, which it's kind of maybe it's a pretty healthy thing to do, like they can get out of their own head and be like, okay, I understand other people. Like I understand other
I
people way more
guess,
than
but then you kind of don't you just lose track of who you are in all of this? Like imagine playing hundreds of roles
yeah,
and really
yeah.
delving into them.
Isn't that the whole idea behind Downey Jr.'s role in Tropic Thunder, right? It's like he's
Yeah,
playing the character
dude playing dude,
he's
another
so
dude.
into it, then he forgot who he is.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that kind of meta aspect to that, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. Like a character takes over you. You just become the
Yeah, but
character.
then you like actually you are controlling it, so you're not just mentally ill, right? You're like, because what's the difference between acting and like just I don't know, having a multiple personality disorder? I mean, it's a thin line, right? Because
Yeah.
if you just, because I'm sure some people can actually lose their sense of self in that if they try hard enough. meaning
Yeah, that's what
that
I'm saying. Like you can get lost in any kind of fantasy and idea if you swim, deep enough and far enough in it.
yes, that's why what happened a couple of years ago with all the I identify as attack helicopter, man. I mean, some
Yeah,
people can for real, like they can just really think that, like, yeah, I am
exactly.
that.
And that part, like, I still think about it, like, often because the whole thing just doesn't make sense to me. Because maybe just because of language alone, because to me, it doesn't make sense when I think about it in Russian, for example, because there is no such thing. You don't identify.
You
You're
can't
either is
because the language
something
don't
or
give
you're
you
not
that,
something.
right?
Like, how do
Yeah, you don't
you?
give
What
you
does it
that.
mean? Like, do you identify as Asian? It doesn't matter
That's just
because you're
label.
Asian.
Yeah, it's just
But that's
label.
what.
I could be
But that's how
anything.
words work, though. Like, that's we
Yeah,
use words to describe actual reality.
I mean,
Some stuff is up for interpretation, right? Some
it's a
subjective stuff.
version of the world, right? It's a version of like, yeah, like if I say I identify as Asian, that's a whole conceptual and kind of it's just
Right,
one
but
way of
it doesn't mean anything.
no,
You
exactly.
are Asian
What do
because
you
you're
mean
Asian.
Asian, right? Just
Yeah,
because a place called Asia and then you are from there and therefore you call this, I mean, it can be
that's
anything.
how we use words though.
Yeah.
Belong to this category. That's just a fact. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
like
matter whether you
there's
identify
no
with it or not.
there's no meaning in being from China or Russia. It's just a name, right? It's like whatever. It could be different. That could be a different name, right? That country
No,
could
it
be a
could be,
different
but
name, and you
it's
will be
not, right? Like it's stating a fact. There's undeniable. However we use the word Asian applies to you. Genetically, culturally, ethnically, etc. That's what it means. It means you come from Asia. If you're saying a person is Russian, it means they're however you identify what Russians are. But it's not like whatever, right? It's you can't just say like I can't identify as Asian,
right, right,
right?
because it's a categorization, right? That
Exactly.
word
Yeah.
you have to because obviously if you think about it, it makes sense. Okay, so these people are from this continent that we call Asia, and therefore you can geographically isolate this part of it, and therefore you
Yeah.
can categorize these people from here as from here. That way you can kind of make sense of the world, because otherwise, if you don't put a name to it, then well, who are these people, and
And
what's
that's the
the
point. That's how every word works. Every word is just a category. Oh,
yeah,
you can't say I'm a banana when you're not a banana because that's not how the words work, right? We all have eyes. We all see, okay, this guy is obviously Asian. Like you can't that's why it's a whole meme category at this point, right? There are people, there are white folks who are like I identify as Asian. You can literally find videos like that on YouTube right now, and they're doing surgery and stuff because
that's
they
just
got
this mental illness. That's all.
they're mixing something up on such a
Yeah,
basic level that they
because
essentially
the
forgo the meaning of words entirely.
what's the actual term? The referencee and the reference are not has no connection, right? No actual tangible logical connections, right? Because like you were saying, if the person identify as banana, what does that even mean? It's
It
nonsense, right?
doesn't mean
Because
anything.
there's
Yeah.
no connection. There's no connection, actual connection that makes sense. Saying, okay, yeah, I see how. Even if you go to genetically, we're very different from bananas genetically, like right? It's they're not from the same.
Yeah, and that's the
Yeah.
point. There is no any sense to it. So that's why it's so fascinating to like see like why did that even happen? Like what happened? Because at this point, I think all of this stuff is literally just social contagion and people being bored out of their minds. That they're
Well,
just inventing new stuff for the sake of it.
but I think that there's definitely, I think mental illness does figure into it a lot because they're not operating on the same spectrum on the level that normal people accept as sort of,
Well, that's where it's funky because all these people are saying no. That's
yeah,
not mental illness. That's
they can
just
say no.
that's my truth or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. But see, that's the problem with this whole postmodern. This is what I studied in school, which is kind of really turned me off, really, at the end of my studies. But during our school, that's what we studied, right? All about postmodernism, which is the idea that basically to kind of boil down to just the idea that essentially your truth, my truth, everything, it's it's almost like it's like the wild wild west. The idea that everything is fine, everything can be true. Like you're saying that
Yeah,
only
it's
because that's from your perspective. So that's what they're arguing, right? So
but
there's
they're
no,
essentially then denying the existence of objective reality.
yes, that's basically what it is, right? And you see how problematic this is, because in the academic sense, from a sort of, whether that's art from the field of art or the dialogue in philosophy, this just creates general confusion, because then people are like, oh, okay, I can just my truth is the truth, and okay, whatever I believe is the truth as well. So I don't agree with you, but hey, I'm real, you're not. So it's kind of given this sort of credence almost to these ridiculous ideas that people have. So they use this. Some people use this kind of philosophy as a sort of license, like a blank check to just be like, yep, I can just do whatever that I like, just because, yep, I agree with this sentiment that my truth is the truth and you're just fake or whatever, right?
Yeah, it kind of it reminds me of what we talked about the last podcast, because in the last podcast the Squanch Master character was essentially what
Okay, what's the name of this one? What's the name
uh,
of this one?
I'm Dr. Pointless. Yeah, the Squanch Master was essentially kind of representing that whole point of view that you can just live in your subjective reality if you want. As like if you because yeah, if you just say I don't care about the external world and external reality and everything else, technically it is a choice. So you could, from your own perspective, from a perspective of an individual, you can just say that, yeah, these are the rules of my subjective reality. But it's inevitable that you will clash with the objective reality, which is the consensus reality, which means like when
Yeah.
you and I, we don't know exactly what you experience and I experience. We can't compare it exactly. But surely if we're pointing to a color and we both agree that we call it red, that's enough. But then that's how we use words to describe this common reality. So when we start using these words completely differently now that they are mean something else, essentially, when you say like, oh, I consider myself a woman. What do you mean? That's not how we use words. You don't consider yourself to be anything. You either are something or you're not. The book is either of red color or it's of green color, right? There's some kind of error happening. So consensus reality is that means that the majority people, how they use words and everything, essentially it wins. If you start introducing all these fringe ideas of how, or I have my own rules, I have my own prepositions and verbs and nouns, okay, but then you live in your own world, or you find folks who would like to role play with you in that reality, but that's just all fun and games. Like, what do you propose we do for life, for like workplace and general communication? Like, if everybody starts inventing their ways of using language, it's just like a
Yeah.
hobby club. Maybe you can do that, like some little fantasy worlds, but to go out into the real world and like, I'm a Pokemon. You get locked up for this 20 years ago. What happened?
Yeah, because see that, yeah, this is a kind of like opens up a whole can of worm, right? Because yes, it does make sense that in a certain ways you can choose how you want to live your life. That is an essence of freedom in that sense. But beyond that, it just kind of opens up all these areas of confusion and basically no standards, right? And it's just chaos because this is like, okay, why is there a, let's say, the traffic law? Why is there a traffic law in every country saying, okay, you got to stop when you see a stop sign, right? If you say, oh, I don't believe your law, I don't care, right? I'm living my own reality. In my reality, I can drive however I like. I don't have to stop for anybody.
Apparently, that reality is called Vietnam because that's how they drive there. Have you seen the
Yeah.
traffic footages from that place? There's no, as a pedestrian, you just like go through the moving traffic and
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
supposed to trust the
And,
traffic that it will avoid you.
but
And that's
hey,
the
some of
system.
them they're master that whole thing, right? They're like, no problem. Yeah, this is not a problem, right? But I'm just saying, right? The idea that we had to come to a certain standard because otherwise society will not work because everybody wants
Yeah,
something.
there's gonna be
Everybody
no
wants something that,
cohesion. If everybody has their own
that,
system, it's not gonna work.
yeah, you got to negotiate. You can't be like, oh, I can just do whatever I like. So this is why standard exists. And it's one of the things, like, I wouldn't go into a tangent, but this is kind of if you want to distill down the whole history of China, for example, that's what the whole process is. If you want to understand the history of China, you just have to understand the fact
Standardization.
that these people standardized thousands of years ago everything because they back then they have multiple countries within that region of China. So they have their own customs, their own languages and written systems and coinage and everything. So it's a hassle to even trade between these different states, right? So what ended up happening is it unified because one of the states decided, you know what, this is not going to work. This is too much, and also for their own sense of they want power, they want control, and therefore they unified everything. And then that first emperor standardized everything. And if you want to understand the modern China, you just have to understand what happened then. It's the same thing, really, thousands of years, the same system, standardization, centralization, and that's that. So the Chinese has no qualm about like whatever else doesn't matter. This is how you run a society. This is how things will work because without this kind of you can argue about democracy or this and that and all this other aspects, but the problem is like without a central kind of like a system in which things are standardized and kind of improve across the board, you're not going to have anything. And now you see the difference. The rise of China just proves to the world that well, this is kind of how things will work. Because without this, nothing will work. And
Yeah, there's
China
no
is getting to
coordination. Everybody's doing their
it's
own thing.
it's the more I see what's happening in China, the more I'm like amazed like how that system worked out. So like, it's almost like the effort has been
Because it
concerted.
works really well for scaling specifically. That's
Exactly.
another thing. Yeah.
So you can think of it as running a company. In a company, you cannot have a decision made by committee. You have to have a CEO, a person who says this is the direction of where we want to go, and this is the law. You gotta do this because if you want the company to do well, this is how you do it. You can't just be like multiple guys saying, "Hey, I don't agree with this. I don't agree with this," and then nothing gets done. This is what happened in the United States right now. Their government cannot agree on anything. They're shut down. The system is just grind to a halt, and nobody can even agree on how to even trying to improve the state of the country. So that's why it's general chaos out there in the States.
Yeah, because it's too many elements vying for power, right? It's always going to be that. If you have all these players who consider themselves players and who don't, there is no framework for, essentially, it's not even in the culture to respect the framework. It's still everybody just trying to gain their piece of power.
Yeah, it's like screw the system. Okay, but then what? You know, people keep shouting screw the system. Okay, but then we still have to have a system. So what would that be, right?
Yeah.
And just you just see the amount of bickering that happens within even a neighborhood, like between neighbors. It's like, oh, you cannot do that because I don't like it. It's on your side of the fence, but I don't like it, and
Yeah.
therefore that's the problem. So you gotta deal even on this microscopic level of your living situation where you have to deal with stuff like that. It's like,
I mean, there's so much strange stuff in the U.S., man. I feel like we could just be doing episodes if we're just on that alone. There's how much stuff, weird stuff is happening there on all levels of
my God,
society.
but why?
There's, I think, videos I saw on YouTube where a guy just goes around and trims people's lawns, and sometimes he does it for free.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
people
remember
literally
seeing.
call cops on him because, like, I don't know why. I can't figure it out. Like, they don't like it or something. They
Right.
don't like that he's being noisy or something. But imagine how much of an asshole you have to be to have a problem with something like that. Like, what is the problem? Like, somebody is giving somebody a free trim for a lawn. Like, what is your problem with that? It's
I
so
mean, maybe their
strange.
problem is you're infringing on the rights because it's not your property, therefore you can do nothing about it.
But
That's their
that's not
idea,
their
maybe.
property. Like, that's their, it has nothing to do with them. It's someone else's house. It's like it's someone
Yeah, but
else's
for
property.
them, somehow they're like, well, the Constitution says you got to protect the right of the people, and you cannot just do something on other people's property without their permission.
No,
Blah
but
blah
he has
blah.
consent.
You know?
He doesn't. Yeah, that's the weird part. It's just they're not happy with that. He's doing it for free or something. Like, it's essentially their own problem that they made up with this. But it's that, like, I don't know. There's obsession with I don't know how to call it. It's not just obsession with rights, but just obsession with you're concentrating on the wrong thing essentially. If you're watching like every human in your country, in your neighborhood, and around you, if you're watching that they're not infringing on anybody's rights, it's a weird way of life. You know, hey, are you infringing on my? Oh, whoa, you're just infringing on my rights there. That's it. I'll shoot you in the face. What kind of a way to live is that?
Yeah, it's it's definitely, if you think about the American system in general, this idea that they have overall, it's a very, I would even say a very strange invention almost, because they are the first country who ever kind of did that as a sort of experiment. Because when they first got started, it was like, well, this has never been done, right? Like the French didn't, well, the French that came later. So the Americans started this whole thing first, the first democratic country where everything is, they have a constitution, it's about voting and all that. It never existed before because of all kingdoms and what have you, right? And then the French and they adopted it too. They're like, oh yeah, that's an interesting idea. I mean, yeah, this is why the French Revolution, I mean, not why, but how the French Revolution happened later was being inspired by the American kind of systems. Like, well, that's very interesting experiment. So they wanted to do that too because of all the corruptions of the monarchy and all the rest of it, right? But it's hard because even then later on they turn to Napoleon, so become an empire again. In their mind, they don't have this notion. It's such a strange notion about democracy that the Europeans don't have that kind of as the sort of they look at it as like, oh, that's interesting. We want to try it, and then it fails because people don't think
I
that way.
can't get rid of hearing this speech by Osho every time, this meme. Like the democracy is ruling by people for the people, but the people are retarded.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But it's kind of true, you know? Not
yeah,
everybody is smart enough to make good decisions.
yeah.
It's to that degree. But then to make decisions on a ruling and the political, and scientific basis, I would think that you need kind of specialists. Then, of course, you need them to be good people and ethical, etc. But still, I would argue that intellect does come into play there. I mean, I'm sure, actually, now I'm curious to find maybe some experiments on the topic of just testing democracy for its efficacy of making correct decisions. There's got to be some stuff on that. Because if you take a group of specialists, they beat the group of non-specialists every time. If we're talking about making a decision, on a consensus basis, it's so that I wonder how democracy solves for that. I guess I don't know enough about it to talk about it. I'm sure there's still representatives and all of that, but it doesn't seem to be working exactly that well.
I mean, here's the thing that most people don't, or at least from the West, they kind of don't think this way. But actually, China is a democracy in a way that they do have elections. They do on the local level. Like yes, on the governmental level on the top, it is the party controls everything. Yes, but on the local level, in terms of the every province and every state, they actually have a kind of
Local leaders.
local, yeah, they're being slightly elected. Yes, not really by the people, but they are elected by a group of people who knows enough about how to run the country. Like they will agree if this person is who's running, if they deserve the position. So it's a meritocracy in that sense, right? So yes, it's not a direct democracy, like the West, where like, every single citizen have a right to vote on the leadership or whatever. But at least on the local level, they have experts who can say, okay, yeah, this guy he's good. He can do this. He got all the credentials. He can, and so they do run. There is discussions between people who
Yeah,
have
but
some kind
that's
of,
more like a meritocracy then, right? It's just
yeah.
more of a
So technically it's still a democracy, right? You still
okay.
are not like, oh, one guy says everything. There are still have local
Yeah,
discussions
that
about how to
wouldn't
run the
be
thing.
tenable anyway.
Yeah.
You
So
do need to like I understand democracy from the standpoint of there needs to be an election kind of and a ruler for for each locale, right? So you do want for the people who are familiar with a specific small region to be responsible for that region and have a hierarchy there. But because that like people who live in one spot have completely different situation and environment and needs than another spot. So that part really makes sense.
Yeah.
But the
So
fact that
no, go ahead.
no, for yeah, I guess I see politics is my least topic that I can talk about because I just don't know enough about it. So I'm just very aware that whatever I'm gonna be saying about it is gonna be very dumb.
Hey,
I
I'm
literally
just
don't know enough about it to talk about
I'm
it.
also a casual observer of it. I'm not like an expert at all, but like at least I've just
But like you
seen.
know more about it, yeah, because I know you're paying more attention to both history and politics. For example, I don't even know. I only just heard recently that like the shutdown on U.S. like I think it already ended, right? But I don't even know what happened then and what's going on because I didn't pay
But
attention.
I think that whole thing was just a political move by the Democrats to be like, yeah, we hate Trump, we don't like Trump, and therefore we're not gonna do what he wants us to do, so we're just gonna shut down. Like, what are you gonna do? You know, they're like trying
And
to
then you're
kind of
gonna
make
get
him look
stuff like
bad.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, but then they're like shut down the entire government. That means all these services are stopped. People are not getting paid for these governmental jobs anymore for the period that they went down because it's shut down. Nothing gets done, right? So it was kind of like, so the whole government was taken hostage by the Congress deciding that we're gonna protest by just shutting down the government. Think about that, right? It's like kids on the playground just like throw a tantrum at each other and be like, "Yep, if that's gonna be the case, I'm gonna do this," and just being petty, right? It's completely being petty and not thinking about, okay, what's that gonna do to the country, the damage, and just because they can say, oh, screw you, Trump, right? Because we don't agree with you, and therefore we're gonna, you know. So it's like a pissing contest from both sides, and
What happens if
it's
they
just
try to do that in China?
you're done. You want to do that? Like seriously,
Hey,
nobody
we
can even
protest. This is
seriously
not good.
they can't even
We don't
seriously
like it.
even consider that. It's just like that's suicide. That's literally like this political suicide is actual like you don't want to live anymore. Like that's it. You want your life
But
to go to the shitter if you want
this
to do
is
that.
this is kind of I guess it's always like a double-edged sword, but to me this is an example of how essentially there is a respect for the system because you can find any number of people not happy with any system at any time.
Yeah.
But if there's a respect for the system, there is stability. There is at least a certain predictable way that you can expect to navigate this system, and you know what to expect from it at least. But when everybody can just say like, no, we're not gonna work with that, it's just becomes a breakdown of this power. You know, everybody
Yeah.
just
And
tries to get their piece of power.
to that point, I will insert a little bit of a historical discussion with that because you see what happened during the French Revolution. The French decided to revolutionize their entire system, and you know what happened? All the other European countries around us invaded France. This is the reason why Napoleon came to power because the Germans were coming. They're like, yeah, while you guys are doing this whole revolution thing, we're just gonna come in and take your shit
Yeah, like
because you're
sharks
weak.
smelling blood in the
Because
water.
you kill your own king. The system is wholly in chaos. Like we don't give a fuck. We don't
Yeah.
care. Well, I see you're weak. I'm gonna take your stuff.
Yeah,
That's what happened.
you're completely disorganized. You're not going to
And
be able to respond as a country.
while the French were killing their own people because they were hijacked by this group of political extremists called the Jacobins, they're just like they're like the revolution, right? They're like we're the revolutionary. We're gonna kill everybody who's disagree with us. We want a new world for France, but it's really just self-serving for the guy who's in power, right? And he's killing everybody that disagree with him. So it's a reign of terror. So the whole idea, so it was an intellectual idea that came out like, hey, all men are created equal, and they even established this Bill of Rights, right? Which is very important intellectually in terms of the future of countries and the governance and everything. But it soon turned to shit because people are just imperfect, let's just say, right? They can see that is a good idea, but the thing when they actually in execution, greed and power hungry kind of
Yeah.
came back, right? They're like they got hijacked, and then all the other countries around they're seeing this like, okay, let's go. We're gonna take their stuff because hey, it's like right open for us to do it. They don't have a
Yeah.
functional government. They're killing their own people. They're all in chaos. They don't have an army anymore. Everything is just not working. So let's go. So the Germans invaded France, and France had to capitulate because Paris was taken. I mean, the German took all the stuff and then they went back. It's like, yep, victory. And this is how Napoleon came around, because like the sentiment, like, oh, this is BS. Like we're killing ourselves by doing this. This is why they went back to the imperial system, basically the empire, the French Empire, right? So Napoleon was able to defeat all these incursions militarily and then establish the stability. And then that's why the French are like, yep, the empire's still good. Screw all that democracy BS. Like, it's not going to work. So in the European mind, it doesn't work that way, right? They have never had the notion of like, oh, we're just going to let a whole bunch of plebs to just random peasants to decide like the whole country. Like, how's that going to work, right? And also across the pond in the US, why here is also something we have to consider. Not the only reason, but part of the reason why democracy, the American style democracy, can survive is because they are geographically isolated.
Right.
They have the little haven that they can do this thing with. Because imagine if you live in Europe. This is what happened to the French. They're like, oh, we want democracy. We want to run this thing. We want to depose the king. We want to start off this whole little experiment. But the Germans and all the other European powers say, no. Say goodbye to your wealth. Say goodbye to your whatever. We're going to take it.
True. Yeah. So it's interesting that U.S. is in this very incubator, like this experiment. Right?
They were allowed to develop a democracy because nobody can invade the U.S. continent because it's so hard to do.
Yeah.
Literally right now, like, the U.S. has such a great position geopolitically. You know how many other countries are like, they're dreaming about, imagine our country having that kind of geography. Like, it's literally nobody can invade the U.S. There's just no way. It's two oceans, and so an invasion is impossible. Even right now, Russia can't do it, China can't do it, and even with all the advanced weapons, you can't do it. Just because the sheer geography of two oceans, you just can't do it. There's no way. People tried it in the past. Japan tried it in World War II. They couldn't do anything. They're not enough to do it. So the U.S. is blessed with great land, and they were able to do their whole experiment. And their part of their success is because nobody can interfere with them, with their development. But if you go to, conversely, if you go back to China, the reason why China do the way that the things they do is because the geography does not help them at all. Because
Right.
everybody wants
Vulnerability.
a piece of China. Like, this is great. This land is great. This is a great resource. I mean, they have a great thing that the civilization developed, and everybody wants it. This is what happened during the 18 Opium War and everything. The European were like, we want a piece of this.
Right.
Right? They were colonizing everywhere, so they wanted to colonize China. And so what happened is, because the Chinese state was weak at the time because of internal strifes, corruption, and all the other things, so China was weak, and they did not not able to develop sufficiently. They didn't modernize fast enough, and so they were taken advantage of. This is the sad state of the world, is that if you're weak, the strong will take advantage of you. That's just how it is, you know? So China for 100 years is being called the 100 years of humiliation. So basically, concessions, losing land,
Hmm.
unfair treaties, and all that, losing supposes almost, I don't know the actual number, but trillions of worth of gold and silver, and it's just being paid for concessions. They
Hmm.
lost places like Hong Kong, they lost certain areas in China, to the foreign powers. But that's what happened, right? So in the Chinese mind, it's like, yeah, you cannot even think about democracy. Can you think about that and try to survive in this world? Well, some people say, hey, I want it this way, I want it that way. You don't have the time. Other people will eat you alive, okay, if you're not get your shit together. So it's already hard to run a country, right? To think about how to make everything work, let alone if you're bickering about it. So again, back to the idea, back to the point that the US were lucky, right? Geopolitically, they were sheltered. They had the haven to develop the democracy. So don't point fingers at other people saying, well, oh, why aren't you democratic? Why aren't you doing this and that? Like, we're not Americans. We're not in your shoes. We're not in your place. This is not the same. right? The the stimulus is very different. So see, this is why each country developed in their own unique way, because there's a reason why they have done it that way. It's not like, I mean, yeah, everybody would think about the concept of democracy. Oh, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, right? Like, yeah, everybody has the right to have their voice heard. Sure. But the reality is sometimes the strategic thinking trumps the idea of having this
Yeah,
nice
because
rights.
you're part of your environment essentially. So you're both boxed in and defined by it. And if you're smart, you'll see and understand that. Not every decision or every idea is applicable in different scenarios. Yeah, it's absolutely true.
Yeah, and I just been very. I am personally of Chinese descent, but I'm scared at looking at the news about China from a just trying to be a neutral point of view. I'm like, wow, they're doing all this stuff. It's like they are living the future. Like they're doing all this stuff to bring that future into reality, and it's scary. It's like I saw videos, right? They're discussing all this. Like they were able to output, like they turning their entire system to the electric, so they're not gonna, they wanted to wean off the dependence on oil because that is a strategic weakness for China because of the geography. They can't get oil like very easily. They can be stopped very, like if the US decide to embargo oil, they can easily do so because of geography. So China can't get oil, can't get gas that easy. So their solution is like, well, we're gonna electrify everything. It's gonna be electric, everything. And their output is already, I think one of the data is like they're on par to the entire electric output of the EU right now. Like one country can output the electric potential of an entire European Union. So how many countries, combined? So literally China is on par with the EU in terms of how much electricity they can generate. And that's crazy. Like
Yeah.
the system that they built within the country of China. Like they got all the electric, everything electric, right? Pretty much. Like basically, if you go to Beijing, if you work with any trucks, they're all electric. And if it's diesel, you
Wow.
can't even enter the city, and you can only do it at night. If you're gonna transport anything, like you in the daytime, you cannot enter the city of Beijing as a big truck because of pollution, because it's not 100% electrified, right? So any diesel, whatever, you have to do it at night, doing deliveries and whatever. Unless you're electric, then they'll allow you to go into the city. So the pollution will not be a problem like before. And they have high-speed rails, electrified high-speed rails, and even their modern weapon. I learned on the newest J-36 stealth. I guess it's a weird thing, right? It looks very aliens, like a bomber, but then it's also I think the role is like a bomber. They just show that kind of it's like a triangle, right? It's like a delta
Okay.
wind. Yeah, the newest one I heard about it is like they fully electrified that aircraft because some expert was saying, yeah, before, because obviously fighter plane need to have electric powers as well because they're generated by the turbine of what the engine that they have, right, to generate enough thing to kind of power the electricity. And the old system is like, okay, well, the generation part is number one, and then you have all these subsystems. So eventually the electric output is so low on each section because it's just trickled down. But the new system is wholly electrified. The entire plane is just about generating electricity, and then that feeds into the whole plane, meaning it's like it's very efficient in terms of all the electricity generation. They have three engines that generates a lot of power, and they are able to basically electrify the entire platform of the airplane. So you can have weapons systems, radar system, whatever, is all powered by electricity, and they're just more advanced that way. So they found they were trying to do development, and they kind of they're going away from the U.S. system now. So they were doing their own R&D. They're finding out about all these kind of intricacies. How do we solve these problems? So yes, you can say, okay, China copy everything. But the thing is, they're so good at kind of figuring out what improvement can we make upon the system. Like that's what their strength is at. Yes, you can say, oh, they don't have any original ideas, blah blah blah. Like okay, but they're very good at improving upon what already exists,
Yeah,
and
if
they
it's
make
if it
it
works, it,
it works. Because you know, I was watching some videos and they say the Chinese prefer the Russian systems. They prefer what the Russians had because they were like, wow, these Russians back in the day in the Soviet Union, they built great platforms, weapon platforms. So they still that's why China still use those old kind of Soviet style bombers and whatever, but they improved them so well that they can compete against the U.S. ones. Like basically,
interesting.
they're all retrofitted like with the modern advanced stuff. So it's like, why don't reinvent the wheel? That's their
Yeah,
idea, right? I was like, you don't need to do that. Just improve upon the designs. Everything already exists. You just have to make it better. And I think also that China was able to have a more efficient diesel engine. I think they invented a more way more efficient diesel engine system. So that can revolutionize all the kind of logistics and, for trucks and everything. But this is the reason why China are seen as a threat for the West because yeah, every metric they're pushing up the so now the basically the bottom line has been raised up, right? Like in
right. The
terms
standard.
of yeah, the standard has been raised too high now. So the West is like they're scared of it because they don't have the capacity to do it anymore.
You know what it reminds me of when kind of you describe how many things that China is doing right at the same time is the fact that it kind of seems like a really well-run project, because from my perspective,
Yes.
I've run
Yeah.
projects and I can see like even how smaller ones, like I've only dealt with really small ones, in comparison to one in a country, but really it is the same type of thing. It's kind of, I guess, a blend of operations and a project, but still you have priorities, you have certain dependencies and deliverables and a goal. And if you structure that well and run it well, you're going to be doing more stuff faster and better. So because it's a matter of quality, time, and amount of work and timelines. So to do all these things at the same time, for example, like um, to develop the electrical grid, and also while watching the air pollution factor, there's all these factors, all these different priorities that you have to juggle, and you can't always just reconcile one as more important than the other. They're important for their own different reasons. So you have to run them all of these things in parallel. And to do that efficiently is very, very difficult. It means that you have a good
Yeah.
framework and a good system to remove roadblocks quickly and
Yeah.
to not create new problems. So you concentrate, okay, this is the goal. We definitely need to have this. And then you streamline towards that. So that's what it reminds me of. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Efficiency.
of course you can you are the expert in this case, 'cause that's what you do in a project management role, and you can see the kind of correlations, right? Like yeah, exactly. I remember you telling me like sometimes in the past of your frustration, the system were not efficient. There's always hiccups, always these hiccups. So it basically denotes how hard it is to really run a project well. That all parts has to work in conjunction, right? They have to work together.
Yeah. There are a lot of elements, but they're like for smaller projects, they're essentially always run into the problem of people, because different people have
Yeah.
different abilities
Ideas
and
and
agendas
they
and
yeah.
ideas. But it's the fact that like different people, because I would be there, hey, I like to do a job well. If we can do a job well where it's efficient, it doesn't cause all of us too much headache and we kind of cooperate and there's harmony, that would be my job. That would be my goal. Because I know that you can create a problem out of nothing, just because you become stubborn and you say like, no, I think it's really that way. So it's a fine balance of kind of understanding where your strengths are and where you need to be even involved and letting things go. So with years, funny enough, as I've been learning more about spirituality and things like Taoism, I became a less involved project manager because I realized like I'm not that central and crucial to the process, especially if they are the people who are working there they understand the process and they're doing the work well. So it's a fine balance of knowing when to be involved, I would say. And I think government has to kind of figure that out too, like because yeah, to your example, like you can't be everywhere at once if you're governing a country. You want to establish a system and a framework which allows all of the parts, from small to big ones, work efficiently and without conflicts and without problems. But you don't like oversee every single thing, because that's
Yeah.
impossible. It's
And this is kind of what China figured out, right? Because back in the day, China was the full believer of like real communism. Like basically the state controls everything, like the Soviet Union, for example. The Soviet Union, one of the thing that they did was centralize everything. Like basically they decide how everything goes. There is no almost no market economy, right? Not like very small. So there are no market forces to decide what the price of everything is. The government says this is how much things cost and this is it. So they control everything. So imagine the amount of bureaucracy that has to be built up because you're trying to
hmm.
oversee everything. So that's part of the problem with the Soviet Union, and it kind of leads to the downfall eventually, right? And the Chinese kind of initially they believe in the same thing. They're like, oh yeah, this looks like a good system. Like we're gonna control everything, industry, agriculture, everything. We need to set prices and what have you. And then they figured out it doesn't really work because when you kind of are intervening in an entire economy, you're gonna screw things up, right? There's so many things you can't unforeseeable um, circumstances that just really throw a wrench in the whole thing. Especially when you don't have, or when China didn't even have the industrial capacity to do it at the time. Or they have nothing. It's not like the Soviet Union had the advantage of they developed all these industry already, so they can do this at the time. But China didn't have it. China was a poor country. Agriculture was the main thing. And so basically they were trying a whole bunch of reforms, a whole bunch of different ways to do things, and it all failed, which leads to eventually the reforms in the early 90s, where they opened up the country. They're like, yep, we saw that the error of our past ways is trying to do pure communism is just not going to work. It just does not work because the incentive is not there. Like you were saying with the Jimmy Carr quote, right? The one that he said, yeah, communism does work, but it doesn't scale. Exactly. You cannot scale to entire countries. It's not going to work.
Works on a family level.
Yeah. So the Chinese were like, yep, we see the fall of the Soviet Union, and that's a really warning bell for China. This is why they opened up in the 90s, because like, okay, our fate is going to be the USSR if we don't do this, right? So they see the problem of what happened to the Soviet Union. They're like, okay, we're not going to do that again. We're not going to be stubborn, whatever. We're just going to open up. We're going to get capital to come in. So now you have the current thing, which is state capitalism. So capitalism is in China. Only the state, the government controls certain levers. So they're playing. It's like the idea of controlling flood. You gotta have some system to kind of balance out where the water flows. So that's what the government is doing. Like they're not controlling everything in the country. They're like, we want people to participate in the market. There is a market forces at play. And they just basically give subsidies for so they give advantages to certain industries to kind of spur them up. That's all they're doing. So this is what's happened with the electric cars. So this is the part like China is kind of scary because their strategy is like they played you. So they allowed Tesla to come in
Right.
and then got you. Once they come in, they are stimulating the competition. So the local Chinese manufacturers start building up their own electric cars because they're just copying Tesla, taking us from them, right? And then the local Chinese one outcompeted Tesla because they can do it better, right? So they invited Tesla as a competition. So they understood this is how capitalism works, but we control the levers. So we don't allow things to go out of control, but we are allowing the people to figure out because everybody wants money. So that's why all these manufacturers are like, they're crazy about making electric cars because, okay, that first is the mandate. Second of all, it makes money. They see how Tesla is making all the money, and they're like, so the whole system is set up for that way. So they can build electric grid, already building electric grid, so they can just plug it in, right? So it's almost like it makes perfect sense for China to electrify their cars. So the whole system both benefit the country, benefits the private industries, and the government as well. So see, they're playing certain levers. So they understood how you have to kind of let things go, certain things go, and certain things you have to control. So that's how they are able to kind of manage everything. Now, China has problems, obviously. There is still, issues that they have to deal with. But overall, they have a better handle at things, and they're trying to find solution to all the problems that they have. So like all the people up top, they understood the issues. They're not just somebody who don't know anything about how to run a country and then in a position of power. That's this disaster because you got to know how things work. Otherwise, every decision you make is gonna be you're gonna screw up. You're gonna delete something that's vital just because you
Yeah.
don't like it.
And they
That's not.
definitely don't have problems with people identifying with helicopters and shit.
Yeah, you can't even be homeless in China. You cannot even be homeless.
Right.
Because they will take care of you basically. Like we'll give you food, we give you money, we give you whatever, but just don't be homeless. That's not allowed. We'll give you shelter, we'll give you whatever. So you can have even if you have no money, no nothing at all, the government will still take care of you. Like, be okay. Like you're not gonna be without any shelter or gonna starve to death. No, that's not gonna happen. But you're not also not gonna live great because you don't make any money. So, but you just exist.
But still, like, that's more than US or Canada does,
Oh
essentially.
yeah,
That's the crazy part.
it's basically free for all here. Like if you're down on your luck, well, tough luck. That's the system.
Yeah.
Basically, nobody cared about your well-being. It's like it's up. You're alone there. It's all up to you, and that's kind of the Western mentality, right? It's like, yeah, this is the like they're against. I mean, people. I mean, the sentiment is like, oh, we don't like communism, we don't like socialism or whatever. And well, this is what happens. If you don't even take care of the citizen, then this is what it is. Free for all, right? If you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. So that's
Yeah.
the
There
reality
definitely
that a
needs
lot
to
of
be
people
some
live
kind
in
of
the West.
balance.
Yeah, because and the balance is hard to do because like, if you hear about what happened in Europe right now, it's just a cluster F right now in Europe. France is running out of money. France is no longer France. They are about to go bankrupt almost because they spend so much money on welfare. So this is the opposite problem, right? Like they were spending so much on people's pension and welfare that they cannot reduce it anymore. Like they're like, what was it? Last I saw was like 54% of public spending is for like welfare and whatever. So half, more than half. So meaning that, and also because the economy is not great, so France had to borrow more money to keep the social welfare system going. And then every time, it's funny because every time they try to talk to the people, be like, hey, can we raise the pension age just a little bit? Asking the people to just work a little bit more. They protest. They go to the street. They start rioting, whatever. So anytime France tries to limit a little bit of the social welfare to get some,
Mm.
basically to get some relief, the people revolt. This is what happens basically if you give sweets to a kid, they're gonna develop a sweet tooth. This is what
Yeah.
happens in France. So
Got used to the good stuff, and
got used to
essentially
the
it's
good.
the example of the output is overshadowed by the consumption, right? The
Yes.
consumption is like we want to consume more than we're producing, essentially, right? On a basic level, that's what's happening. And yeah, as a country, you want to avoid that. Yeah, of course, you can make any kind of policy, but this is an example of how, like, it has to be sustainable. So it has to be balanced out at the end of the day.
Yes.
And if you don't balance
I
it
mean,
out one way or another, it's gonna fail even at the end.
like as an individual, if I'm French citizen, of course I want more money from the government. Yeah, wouldn't that be
Everybody
great,
wants more
right? Like
money.
give me all of it. But then you gotta think, well, where's that money coming from? There's no free
Yeah.
lunch in the world. This coming from somewhere. So the French government keep borrowing money, trying to prop up the system. But now they're to a point where they're so dangerously close to bankruptcy because it's so dangerous. They borrow way too much. They can't even
So
pay
what
it
does it
back.
mean for a country to go bankrupt? How does that even work?
Meaning they cannot pay their interest of the loan that they borrowed. So they will have to find an agreement somehow to kind of redistribute the money back because you owe people money. So people gonna
Hmm.
come to you, be like, where's our money? So the problem is like the same with the U.S. right now. They were owning so much money, like the amount of interest they pay every month is like astronomical, you know? So it's not sustainable. Meaning that because you have to pay people, meaning sometimes they will borrow more money to pay the people from before. It's like a Ponzi scheme of, you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. It doesn't really make much sense to me,
So if
especially on a country level. Like
so
who is gonna work? Has something like that happened before? Like what is it?
well, multiple times.
Because
This is
essentially
why
the country would have to agree to like give up something,
yes.
like
So you
some
see,
kind of assets or territory or something, right?
this is what I see online. It's pretty very interesting. So the U.S. is at the stage 5 of empire collapse that has happened before.
What?
So it was what was
They
before was
unlocked a
the
new
Span
level.
yeah. So it was the French well no, it was the sorry, it was the Spanish Empire, and then it was the British Empire, and then it was the Soviet Union. So they have patterns that are very, very similar, right? There's like 7 stages of it. And I'm bad at remembering shit, so I don't think I even remember exactly what the 7th step was. But basically, it's like the essential idea is that these empire outspend themselves. They spend way too much money. So at the Spanish Empire, for example, is like they were an empire. They control a lot of the silvers. So what they did was just spend money. We want expansion. We want more empire. So they were borrowing money to fuel the wars all over the world, their colonies and everything. So they overextended themselves, meaning they borrow way too much money to do all their military stuff and the expansion and stuff like that. So eventually they can't pay it back. So what they do is they try to water down the silver because back then they used silver, right? So you have to actually make the coin out of silver. So before it was pure silver, 100% pure silver. That's why it's valuable. But eventually they start diluting their it's like right now. The US printing money is the same idea. They're diluting the supply. They just print a whole buttload of money that just lead to inflation. So what happened in the Spanish Empire is like pure silver back in the day, and they start adding copper to it to dilute it. So you don't have to spend as much silver making one silver coin, right? You can use half of it or whatever. And eventually there's no silver in the silver coin at all. That's how much money how diluted it is. And then people stop accepting that as a currency because there's no silver in it. There's no value. You're selling me fake shit, right?
Yeah.
So their currency collapsed because nobody want to use the Spanish dollar anymore, the Spanish silver, because there's no silver in it. So meanwhile, as this was going on, they keep borrowing money, and therefore they're because they got so rich, right? It's the same as what the U.S. is doing right now. This is why this stage is kind of like a mirror image almost because see right now the U.S. they're a rich country. So what happened was they stopped doing manufacturing. They stopped doing all these stuff. They outsourced this stuff because we're rich. Why should we? We just need to consume. We just need to buy stuff. We don't need to make anymore. Like we don't want to do the hard work of producing any of the stuff. This is what happened right now, right? The U.S. exported their entire manufacturing base, their entire kind of productive for things. They outsourced it to China because it's cheaper to be done there. So the Wall Street only care about making profits. All these companies, they only care about making profits. So they export all this hard labor and whatever. They mean they can get it done for cheap while they charge higher rates, right? That's what happens. So this is the whole financialization of the global economy, especially in the US. So this parallels like the Spanish empires too, because eventually they basically import food, import everything because they were at their height of their power. They're rich. They can buy stuff from everybody. So their internal production stopped. Nobody are producing anything useful anymore. And eventually when everything got so bad because the amount of money they borrow and everything, they can't pay it back and they dilute their own currency, eventually nobody buys anymore. And their empire collapsed. Spain never came back for this has been
Hmm.
hundreds of years and they never became anything other than a regional, not even a regional power. I'm sorry about Spanish people, I'm sorry, but like this is reality, right? This is what happened, right? You guys never came back in terms of being a powerful country. Like this is it. the damage been done, right? So if for such a long time, you still can't really get back to the, no way. Same thing with the British, right? They were doing empires all over. They overextended, they overspent the money, and then eventually they collapsed by the World War One, World War Two, really, because that was a huge damage. World War One is a huge amount of damage to the British, because of the war, all the spending that they had to do, and then literally the British power is done by the end of the First World War, and the Second World War is like literally nailed to the coffin, right? And the U.S. kind of got all the money from that because they were selling weapons to the British during the both World War. So they were isolationist, but they were getting all that money. This is why the 90s were such the roaring 20s in the States, because they got all the money flooding into the US as a safe haven. So all that is to say, this system is, you can see the mirror image of what happened from
Yeah,
history.
the trend is not good.
It's not good. The US already, you see, they're inflating their currency. Now the US dollar is weakens. They're printing so much money that it inflates the US dollar, meaning the asset bubble is happening, right? Because yeah, if you own stock, if you own okay, right now it's kind of coming down, but the real estate back in 2020, the pandemic, it was crazy because
Hmm.
as the inflation rises, the assets prices rise too because it follows the inflation. So that's why the stock market is doing so well. But the problem is the economic doesn't support it. Like, I mean, the actual economy and the stock market have diverged now, right? It's not following the same similar trend anymore. So meaning there's going to be a crash. I believe that there's a crash is coming. Like there's just no way this is going to be
Yeah, it can't
sustainable.
last forever, right?
Yeah, so I just think that it's going to happen. I think right now it's happening because the AI bubble is about to pop. Because I just heard the SoftBank, one of the largest investment kind of entity, they pull out all their Nvidia stock. Like they sold everything. They sold their
Wow.
Nvidia stock, like all of it, like billions of dollars worth. So it means that they know something. They know that this shit is not sustainable.
Yeah,
And
the
the
turn
AI
is coming.
race is it's here's the thing, right? The AI ecosystem in the West is not working because they don't have a viable product. Like for example, OpenAI, like they're burning money.
Yeah, that stuff we already talked about before.
Yeah.
I remember that
So yeah,
topic.
we're not gonna go into that.
I I was doing some quick research here on the international debt in United States. There's some interesting figures. There's the current U.S. external debt reached 28.6 trillion this year, and it's just
Yeah.
it keeps rising because it was 21.1 in the beginning of the year. So it's just some crazy numbers. Total U.S. gross federal government debt surpassed 38 million this October. It's marking a historic milestone.
Like
It's all of this money represents debt held by the public, so it's money borrowed from domestic and foreign investors.
yeah.
So essentially a ton, like crazy amount of money, right?
And so the problem is if the economy collapse, everything collapses within the US. Like it's not just the government, it's the public stuff, right? It's public
Yeah, because it's
loans
so
and
connected. The debt to GDP ratio has reached critical levels. Most federal debt stood at approximately 124% of GDP at the end of 2024. It's essentially, again, another example of the consumption, outpacing the output, right?
yes. So this is the other thing I want to talk about is that this is the result of think about the height of the US economy was in the 90s, right? Like they were like doing the greatest at the time. That's why the 90s were so people were reminiscent of because yeah, everything was great in the States. That's been what, 35 years. But between that, because I see this from basically during Clinton's era, what he did was he allowed options trading during the 90s. Like before that, like you can't do that much options trading. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know about this, but I heard the fact that he has an act like a Security Exchange Act or whatever. So in the 90s, what he did was he opened up the kind of investments that Wall Street can do. Because before, the government had regulations on what they can trade and what they can't trade.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't use too much leverage back in the day. But now, because everything seems so great, the economy is great. So Clinton, like he did the act of allowing, basically, he signed the executive order to allow Wall Street to just open it up. Like you can do whatever you like. You can do leverage trading, option trading, yeah, basically option trading, whatever, right? Which leads to even more money generated. So at the end of the 90s, yeah, the US was like, we're doing great, right? But see, the problem is when you open that up, option trading is very risky, right? You leverage way too much. If you leverage way too much, you're done. So this leads to the 2008 financial crisis because of that legislation opened up everything. Basically, Wall Street, they're like, well, the world is our lunch. We can financialize every single thing there is. So they did that
Right.
for their mortgages, right? Like from the Big Short, the movie is a great movie, right? It's showing you what happened. It was just they were like, hey, what else can we financialize? What else can we sell and trade to make money? And they're like, oh, mortgages. Yeah, there's just so many, it's like a construction boom. So like, let's do that. So they loan money to people who can't even afford to buy a house, whatever, don't care, right? They package all that stuff as like, hey, this is a financial asset. Let's sell this. And what happened was, well, eventually the grenade is gonna explode, right? And that's what happened. That was a big mistake, obviously, for the financial system for the U.S. is a big. It's like they did a huge amount of damage. And now with the pandemic and everything else, now we see the remnant of all that kind of systemic change because nothing was done about reining in the Wall Streets. Like they were continue allowed to just do whatever they like as long as it makes money. And at the same time, outputs are being outsourced to other countries. So Wall Street they have a big appetite. They're like, yeah, we want to make more money. So export all the manufacturing, whatever. We don't care. We don't want to do the hard work. Screw that. We're just gonna make more money, right? But financializing their entire thing. So the U.S. system, U.S. economy is about financializing all things, basically trading everything, right? Trading things as assets. Like basically anything under the sky can be traded. So it leads to one of the boom in American economy, but it's all like it's so brittle. There's no productive forces at all on the lower ends. So basically, it's all fake money. They're just trading money for.
Yeah, it's based on nothing. It's just literally numbers, exchanging numbers, trying
Yeah,
to get
like
more numbers.
the Wolf of Wall Street, right? It's like, yeah, just all numbers, man. It's like, yeah, but we're taking the actual commission, so that's a smart move. But yeah, but you see, this is what happened now, right? The US in this state, because they did not control their financial sector, they did not have regulations, they did not have all these things that were put in place to protect from this thing from happening. But now it's too late. And you know what's funny? China just started China just started selling US debt, but it's backed by China. And people bought it up like it's like the next best thing. Like people stop buying US issued debt in US dollars, but they buy Chinese issued US debt in US dollars. It's very ironic, right? Like people trust China more than they trust the US in selling US debt because people
Wow.
are start thinking, oh well, US is very dangerous to default. Like you're saying, the debt to GDP ratio is dangerously to a dangerous level now. So people are
Yeah,
concerned.
keeps going higher and higher.
People are concerned that the U.S. dollar going to collapse. But China, they have their shit together, so they're holding that U.S. debt, meaning that they're not going to default on that. So we can actually make U.S. dollars from China. Then they feel better about doing that with China than how they feel about doing it directly from the U.S. government. So it just shows you like how much distrust that the world has with this US right now. Because like we don't even trust your currency now. It used to be the world's default reserve currency. Everybody uses it because it's stable. But now people are like wondering, well, is it really stable? What if the US collapses? They owe so much money. What if they default and the US as the economy just collapse? And then, well, we're fucked. we're screwed if we're still holding
Also,
U.S. bonds.
there's another important statistic. So the rising interest cost, so I guess it's how much you pay on the debt. So
Mm-hmm.
net interest payments reached 1.21 trillion in 2025, representing 17% of total federal spending. In other words, if this percentage keeps going up, you essentially have less and
17%.
less money to spend, on all the stuff that
Yes.
actually does things and creates things and takes care of your people. So that's where it gets a bit crazy.
Yeah. So I guess one other thing one can think about is that, well, if you allow greed to kind of to be out of control, this is what happens, right? Now we can say, oh, all world governments, whichever country is corrupt. Yes, that's true in every country. But how much is that country controlling their overall? Because the thing is, we all know, a country where corruption is rampant is gonna collapse, no, like eventually, no matter what, because the system just cannot sustain itself, right? So this only goes like the greed can only go so high. So you kind of have to have a control system in which you can don't allow the entire system to collapse. Like it's not that you can control
But
corruption. It's always gonna happen.
that's the interesting part to me because, like, that African meme, like, corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
Right.
But if I'm
But if
involved, I defend it.
but you see, if everybody does that though, right? That's gonna be a problem because this is kind of what.
But that's what everybody does essentially to different extent in different countries. What is the country that is, because it has to be somewhere down in the core values of your society for it to not be happening on such crazy levels that it's a
Yeah.
problem for everybody. But it seems to be that it's present, it's just an inherent feature of human society, it seems like.
Yeah.
How crazy is that?
Because people can't help themselves, right? When they get to a certain level of power and kind of status and money, and they're just like, it does go into your head. It's very easy to go into your head, be like, oh, I can do anything I like, right? And like screw all these other plebs. Like that's just happens, right? This is why the world are controlled by the elites, basically, a small group of people who holds all the financial and political levers, and everything else falls in between that. Just the rhetorics and whatever else that they say to kind of help their base. It's all. But what can you do about that, right? It's like these things do happen. Yes, one could say, well, if we all work towards like a common goal, there it will be happening. Well, yes, technically yes, but like to get consensus is very hard because people think very
Yeah.
differently.
It's kind of like reminded me about the situation in workforce for the newer generations at this point. I've heard some comments that people are essentially saying that a lot of the newer generations, they're checking out of the workplaces because there's just isn't anything that they will be able to gain from it.
Yeah,
There's just there is no system for them. It's not like you come in and you get the reward. Essentially, you get messed over.
nothing. Yeah,
Yeah, you get nothing and you get just used up. And people are seeing it from the get-go, because young people are usually, they're fairly perceptive, at least, smart that way. And yeah, you agree that because that's just how things work. Like if people don't see a way to have essentially they don't feel like they are contributing to a thing that in which they will be benefiting from. And then yeah, it doesn't make sense for you to put in the effort.
yeah.
And that's, to me, it says that they're gotta be on the brink of another type of revolution at that point. Because
I
if
think
people
it
en
is.
masse are not gonna be working, like for all these companies and all these, like essentially to use the existing system, because it seems like it just doesn't work. Because we've been using it, but if the system is not benefiting the people who are making the system, why would people be interested in maintaining and sustaining it, right? They're gonna change it, and that might be in for
Well,
another revolution.
this happening right now in some selected countries, right? Like the Gen Z revolution, the Gen Z revolts that happened in Nepal, happened in Madagascar, it happened in Indonesia back in the day, back in a couple months ago. So these are young people, right? These are young people who are most likely lost their jobs, basically. They don't have any viable means, and they are rising up because they have internet access. They can see the problems. Like it happens to these
Mm.
countries because they are most vulnerable for these type of things because of corruption, of all these. They're basically kind of developing countries, right? So they are gonna feel the pinch first because they were the most unstable um, kind of economies, societies, and what have you. So they're very imbalanced. Therefore, they're gonna be feeling this first. So that's why it's happening now. But eventually, I think I agree. Like I think there's gonna be a some sort of movement that's gonna come into the developed country as well. Because you see the problem with EU, right? All these issues happening in Europe and then happening in the West in general. Like it's definitely to a point of there's too many problems all over, right? This is true for Australia, New Zealand, right? Canada here and US and basically all the developed world are having issues right now, right?
Yeah.
I mean, all over the world there's problem, like, everywhere there's problem. But that just shows when the economy slows, you're gonna show you all your weaknesses. Because if you don't get a handle on your situation, these things gonna, you know, come out. So the future is whoever can control the outflows of these sentiments are solving actual problems are gonna survive relatively well.
Hmm.
Otherwise, the entire country is just gonna go in new flames because yeah, people had enough, right? Be like this system is not gonna work. Basically, think back to any time that when you felt like, especially for people who have like say emigrated to like the U.S. or Canada, whatever, back in the day, right? In the US, the example would be the 90s. It's the best time because actually most people have money, meaning the economy is working. The economy is to a point where it wasn't so greedy yet. The Wall Street hasn't got to the point of they haven't screwed up the system yet, right? That's the time when you experience all these new innovations because that's how incentive works. People are incentivized to open businesses to make more money because okay, the economy is doing well. So if individual people can make money, have jobs, have businesses and whatever, so the whole thing works well. That's why people love the 90s. I mean, we all kind of
Yeah.
look back to these
Reminisce.
reminisce. Even if you don't live in that, you get the American culture export, all the great movies in it that came out of the 90s and all this stuff, right? Because there is money to
Oh
go
yeah.
around, which is why you cannot allow the system to go haywire. Like you cannot let the pure greed to just get in the way of the whole system. And that's the lesson, really. But obviously, practically speaking, how do the U.S. come back from this, or how do any country?
By adopting Buddhism on a national level,
Yeah, like you need the
get rid
middle
of
way.
the
You need the
three
middle
roots of
way.
evil.
Yeah, you cannot be greedy. Like okay, if you have enough, good
It
enough.
literally doesn't work. Essentially,
Yeah,
it's a lesson of how people not only lead their own life astray, but they mess up their own society. Because to be wise is to recognize that you're not apart from the society. You can't like scam a bunch of people and not
exactly.
do nothing and gain millions of dollars and
Yeah.
be happy. It just doesn't work like that.
Right. You
Even
see
if
what
you don't
happens.
believe in the metaphysical concept of karma, you know?
I see what happened to the rich people now, right? Yeah, they're rich, but they have to live in gated communities. The world outside of their world sucks,
Yeah,
and they have to live in that, right?
exactly.
It's not like, okay, back in the 90s, you can be rich and you go, oh, this is great. Everything is great. We got great art. We got great entertainment, great everything. Because everybody is kind of fairly rich, right? Even the most working class are making okay money. They're like, yeah, we're enjoying our lives. So everybody can enjoy it. But now the rich people will be like, oh, we got to shut our doors. We're afraid of people breaking into our house or this and that. Like, it's not great. It's not, doesn't feel great, right? Yeah, you had all the money. You can still enjoy whatever. The society is not, you'll be afraid to go out in public,
Yeah.
whatever, right? So it's no longer great because they ruined it. The whole system got so screwed up that basically the top take all the money and the system stopped functioning. Simple as that, right?
Yeah, and at some point, like I mean, it's a real risk because it happened in other countries before where the people get so disgruntled with the rich that they just take things into their own hands and they dispense with the rich.
Man,
That
holy
happened plenty
hell,
of
man.
times.
Plenty of times. And back in the day, oh, it was brutal, but that's what happens. Like history don't repeat, but it rhymes. It's gonna happen
Mm.
again because we don't learn our lessons. We don't learn.
Exactly, because these are essentially our lessons, but they are lessons like they are beyond just political and cultural. They are literally spiritual at that point. Because how many times do you have to see the same scenario play out before you understand? Okay, yeah, you can't be greedy, like just for any,
For your
it
own
just
sake.
never works
Yeah,
for
for your own
anything.
sake. Yeah.
It literally is a sin on a fundamental level that you can't be like, oh yeah, the goodies, You can't get lost in that sauce because it never leads to anything sustainable. I was just reading up on the conflicts in Nepal. So it was literally about the
Corruption.
widespread youth protests triggered by the
Yeah, yeah.
government's ban on social media platforms because it literally trying to silence the political dissent
Yep.
amid already all the conflicts and all the problems. So it's literally like people who are like, yeah, let's just shut them up. Let's let them not be aware of the issues. Let's make them not be able to coordinate anything about it, while I guess they do nothing about solving the actual problem.
Yeah. It's
They had the Nepalese army involved and imposed national curfews. So essentially, literally trying to stomp it out, right? By just having all the control and just completely. But I don't know what they expecting to like for society to do. Just go full North Korea style and just eat grass.
yeah, North Korea is very kind of like an anomaly almost. Like the fact that they lasted so long, even though a lot of people were saying, oh, they were gonna collapse. Even during
Yeah.
the 90s, they were having real hard time in the 90s was a lot of disasters, natural disaster, man-made disaster, and everything. But they still survived. So somehow the propaganda works just that well. Like they just support the Kim family for like no matter what. It's very fascinating to kind of study. But
Well, it's all under the threat of essentially violence as well,
well,
right? It's
yes, but
all
but
hinged on
even
that.
then, you see all the other countries they don't have as much of a hold, right? You do have other
Yeah.
dictatorship trying to do the same thing, but they
Essentially,
couldn't do it.
it's complete. They have the complete brainwashing
Yeah,
method designed there because yeah, if they don't have any way to have even any news from outside the world, then your reality is completely controlled because you
yeah,
have no information. You don't even know what's what. So whatever, if the government is the only source of information and tells you like we're the best guys, this is the best as it gets. Everything else outside they're just morons. They have it like they're suffering, they're wrong. I don't know. I'm curious to see what they're telling their population. But essentially, it's to that extent, right? We're the greatest country out there, so you were lucky to even be
yeah.
here. So don't do anything about nothing else.
But I mean, if you want, but if you want to study this Kim dynasty, they are actually they're brilliant in their own way, in their kind of ways, right? They're able to do this. Like, we're not bringing morality into this, but just to kind of study the fact that these people are able to do what they do and able to be successfully kind of in control. Like it's crazy, right? The amount of control that they have, and also the other interesting thing I learned about is that the world's most talented hackers are North Koreans. They actually have government state sanctioned like hackers. They steal money all over the world. Like they're so good at it that's how they maintain their monies because they can't
Wow.
their economy are so like weak, right? They don't have any trade really. They are a pariah state in the world stage, so they can't trade with anybody, not really, except China and Russia. But that was it. But so a lot of times what they do is yeah, they steal money from they used to make fake US dollars and they were so real. They were almost like the real thing. So the US was like they tried to stamp it out. It was for a long time they couldn't because it's just so good how they made them. But for a while that's how they got their money. And then when the digital age came around, they're like, oh screw that. We're not even gonna that's so much effort. We're just gonna start hacking. So they train a whole bunch of North Koreans like elites like loyal soldiers, but they're very tech savvy, right? They allow
Mm.
them access the internet. They can learn about all about the world, but they still serve the state. So they're the good hackers. There's like a group of them doing all these hackings and literally stealing money. So that's how a large percentage of their income is just from, illicit from ways. That's how
That's wild.
it is wild. Like, but imagine in their shoes. Yeah, of course, this is what they're gonna do, right? I mean, how else are you gonna get money? You gotta support your whole.
Well, if that's you need to be able to first of all even figure that out, and then just to make it happen. It's yeah. It how do you actually make it work? It's crazy.
They incentivize people to, on the threat of execution, right? It's like, yeah, if you don't serve, you're gonna be dead.
Dude, imagine that's the ultimatum. Like, hey, get us money
Yeah,
through the
hacking.
magic internet.
Yeah, or
Just get it,
else.
just receive it
Yeah, or
or you
else.
die. I couldn't figure it out. I wouldn't be able to figure
And
it
look,
out under no amount of threat.
no, but those people are actually very smart, right? They're very computer savvy. They like
Yeah.
they
But
somehow
like to
are
get them and to just to organize the whole thing is just crazy that
right.
this is
They got to
this
learn
is a
about
project in your government. It's like, all
yeah,
right,
they
we're
got to
gonna get
learn
these
about
people, we're gonna make them learn about hacking,
yeah,
and we're
how to
gonna
do it and
yeah, and we're gonna make it on such a scale that it literally gives us a sustainable income. That's
it's
crazy.
happening and they're good. They're one of the best, right? They're so good at it that it's very hard to kind of avoid it because they can strike at any time. They have some advanced techniques that they, like it's people study how they do it. So it's how well they're running that. So, there's a lot of organization and, but some people possibly, yeah, like, well, that's how they do it is like, well, they have these talented people and they basically force them like, hey, we can give you access to the internet. You can watch whatever you like, and we provide you with better food, better accommodations. Your family will prosper if you do what we say. If you ever try to escape or try to, like, we're going to kill all your family. That's how they do it. Like anybody who escaped North Korea, your family are going to be dead. So that's how they control people from not escaping, right? So for a person like that, they're like, well, there's
Yeah, not
nowhere
much
for
of a
me to
choice.
go.
Yeah.
Right. If I do this, I can eat well, my family can live well. So yeah, it's good enough, right? And that's that's how they, because they know that they can't escape, but there's no way. Like, well, they don't know anybody
Yeah.
outside, and they can't, So it's like this.
Complete unknown venture, right?
Yeah, so it's weird that they see the West, they see all the news, they understand about how the world works, but then they're like, oh yeah, it's all a lie. So the North
Yeah.
Korean, their own country, are lying to them about the state of the world and how so they know the truth, but they're like, well,
There's no
nothing I
power
can
or
do.
any kind of freedom to do anything. You literally
You can't do nothing.
wow. Yeah, you're completely restricted. I was just reading up on like how North Korea just exists like that in this state, and it's also a very interesting. Like, it's almost like every country is like has a unique geopolitical situation because in this case, people are asking like, why don't democratic countries free the people of North Korea because it is like a humanitarian atrocity essentially, right? You could evaluate it that way, but the thing is like nobody wants to do anything with it because there's just it's all bad. Like every scenario of a country intervening just creates more of a problem. Like
Yeah.
China, for example, doesn't want all the refugees on its border that would inevitably come running.
Yeah.
Russia also doesn't want that because it's close by, and it's not interested in doing anything with Korea because South Korea is right there and they're pro-American. South Korea doesn't want
Yeah.
anything to do with it because they would have to be the ones rebuilding all of the North Korea if anything
Right.
happens to it.
That's part of the reason why it never happened because politically they can say we want you united the country, but really, even if it were up to South Korea to unite the whole country, the amount of investment they need is going to bankrupt their own country. Like to
Yeah.
fix everything in the north under their banner. Like it will cost them so much money. Like they're gonna bankrupt themselves, so they're not gonna do it. So it's impossible now, right? It's almost even if they wanted to, like step is like not talking about the political side of things. I just say if they were to do it, it's impossible, you know.
Yeah, it's just going to be essentially too costly.
And right now, yeah, everybody support the status quo still because it still holds because it benefits to all countries that it stays that way, right?
Yeah.
Especially now, the North Korean, like, they were one of the biggest beneficiary of the Russo-Ukrainian war right now because they jumped up their economy because they can produce munitions for Russia. So their industry gets worked up now. It's like, oh yeah, we can start making things because these are a commodity we can sell. So they sell to the Russians the artillery shells, the munitions and everything. They even send their own military to help. So that's why Russia and North Korea had that mutual deal. They signed a treaty, right? We're gonna be friends. We're gonna do trades. We're gonna do whatever. And the benefit of that is like the North Koreans are like this third state that things can go through the black market for. Like the North Korean can act they can do deal under the table, right? So that's why they need to exist. That's the North Korean state for both China and Russia, and then for the regional powers. Like they need this. They need them to exist so we can do some under dealings that
Some kind of black market country. It's
black
just
market country. Yeah, exactly.
completely
So
its own rules.
and it works because what North Korea have nukes, so the U.S. cannot touch North Korea, right? So that's the smart thing that the North Korea did was they realized we need nukes. Without nukes, we're done, right? So that's how they somehow got it. Now people are saying, oh, the Chinese gave them nukes basically, but nobody knows exactly, right? But they have nukes. So meaning they are a deterrent both for South Korea, Japan, and the U.S. So like don't do anything. If you want to go, we can go, right? Like even if you wipe us out, we can still fire nukes at you. Like you're still gonna get major damage to your own country if you try something on us. So it's very useful. North Korea is very useful for all the countries involved here. So that's why Russia supports North Korea, China supports North Korea, because they can do some beatings that they can't do on the
Yeah,
table.
it's an interesting kind of topic of they're leaving the North Korea country to deal with their own morals and their own population the way they see fit, and they just deal with them on on a trade and economic and political level. And I think that this approach kind of makes sense, versus the moralistic approach of like, oh, we gotta liberate the people of North Korea. It's because as we try kind of talk about this, whose responsibility is it? It's like, I guess it's everybody's responsibility as a humanity. But for now, we're just political entities. We're all grouped into the political entities, and they have completely different rules. Because even what US has done before, where it would use moral excuses for their actions, it's still all political, right? Don't tell me it's not.
Yeah, it's
I
sometimes
just was reading
it's
about
almost
another angle.
hypocritical, right? Say the US will say one thing, right? They're like, oh, all countries need democracy. But you know the meme, right? You got oil?
Yeah,
Let us give you
democracy
some
is coming.
democracy. Yeah, democracy is coming. You need some democracy, right? So it's all like there's all political, right? But they use that as a moralizing slogan to say, oh yeah, we're good people. We like it works for us. We're the greatest country on earth, and look at us, we're democracy. So why can't you have some? But really, it's all geopolitical. It's all like we want to get something from you. Therefore, we use this excuse to do all this thing,
Yeah.
right? But now people are realizing, okay, this is a bad deal. And went along with it only because you were so powerful that we can't say no, right? Now that China is on the rise, a lot of people are like, you know what? I'm going to go with China because at least they're not telling us what to do, right? They're like,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter. Of course, there's things for China to gain by doing this, but they're building roads, they're building trains for all these countries, and
Yeah, it's
it's
just
like,
it's the whole thing is just like imagining the China or any other government going around saying, no, you should be doing things this way. Who has that authority? Who has the authority to go to other people who are completely different, right? Have completely different historical and cultural roots and norms, etc., and tell them like they should become something else or some other way. At best, you can do is just make a suggestion, but like to forcefully install the regimes, it doesn't make sense because essentially the people are not, it's everything that you hold with yourselves historically, right? Throughout centuries and everything. You're not just like this malleable entity who can just change their ways in a couple of years or something.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work that way.
So
It's a whole system.
So all the times, like all the conflict that happens in the world are really just one side is trying to force the other side to adopt something which they don't
Right.
like, right? More or less, this is kind of the rationale for conflict. It's just like, yeah, we don't agree and we had to fight it out basically because we can't find there's no negotiation, right? At that point, it's just like, it's basically life and death. And that was it. They just need to eliminate the other force physically to gain whatever power or, because just they can't agree constructively anymore, you know? So this is why a lot of people are saying the U.S. is going to have a civil war or whatever. I mean, I don't know, but like it's definitely going in that direction because the sides are not agreeing on anything. There's no constructive criticism of any sort. It just becomes name calling and be like, oh, you're on that side. You're evil, blah blah blah, right? So people are talking across each other, not to each other. So
And the
there's no
fact that it's
communication.
like distinctly two political parties, that itself, I feel like it's a recipe for civil war because
Yeah, two sides. So
exactly two sides. So you pick one or the other, there's nothing in between. And then at some point, the differences or, the conflict escalates so much that it's just you're forced to even take a side. Something like that would happen, yeah.
I mean, yeah, but right now I feel like a lot of countries all around the world are copying China's model now. You see that with Germany. Germany recently just signed a bill where they are expanding their debts because German, they don't like debts. So historically, they never really borrow much money
Hmm.
because they were so economically powerful that we can pay our own way. We don't need borrow money. I can earn my own money. So that was the German way. But you see that this is why a regional conflict can affect the whole world. Since the Russo-Ukrainian war, Germany went into recession because no more Russian gas. All the manufacturing stalls because they don't have the raw material anymore to make those productions. So
Wow.
Germany was in 3 years of, now it's even more, recession, right? Because just they were a manufacturing hub. They make stuff. So without the raw material from Russia, they can't make it cheaply. So everything is expensive. Inflation goes up. So German were forced, they were reluctant because their GDP target is like, okay, your loan ratio can only be 3% of GDP. You can only borrow 3% of your annual GDP. That's how much money the Germans were willing to borrow. But now they signed this bill, it's passed. They're gonna borrow a whole buttload of money to do infrastructures, to build, to repair all the damaged infrastructures, the outdated infrastructure and everything else. So they're gonna do a whole bunch of investment, which is happening at the same time now in Canada, right? The Liberal government has announced that that their recent budget, right? They're still getting that kind of to pass, but basically borrow a buttload of money to build infrastructures with all the energy stuff and to help improve the country, basically. But
Hmm.
it's basically a gamble, right? It'd be like, if it pays off, great. But you borrow this like huge amount of money, you got to pay that back, right? So if it doesn't pay back, if all the project does not meet the target, then you just owe a whole bunch of money
And
for
the
nothing.
tricky part is also, I can see, because these are massive projects, there's opportunity for the corruption essentially so high. Because in order for you to track the returns of this project, it's not going to be like
Yeah.
one to one. It's not easy to
No.
track what these projects generate, but which means that the money has to come from somewhere, regardless of what the
Yeah.
projects or other projects are doing. And that's where it's tricky, because it means that everybody has to behave as one company, one entity, regardless of the types and amount of projects, because you're paying this back on the country level. But that's not how everybody operates. That's not how people behave.
Yeah.
Everybody still is concentrated on their own thing and project. Nobody thinks about at least global
Yeah.
movements and interactions, and at least very few people do.
Which is why they're trying to copy China, but they can't really do it as China because they don't have that level of control, right? They can.
Control and also the cultural, it's again, it's the whole thing has to be there.
Yeah.
So it's like everybody still has to find their own way of doing things, but surely, yeah, just the examples of self-organizations have to be there. It's just, it seems to be there, and they can't be separated from the culture. That's the tricky part. It's like the firmware. You can't behave in a certain way. You can't be a Buddhist without being a compassionate, humble, etc. human being. It's that. So you can't adopt these ways without changing yourself to a certain degree to become the type of people that would be behaving that way. And that, like, how do you do that? That's still the secret, I think. That's the secret sauce, because that goes back to self-identity, as people, to wisdom, to the right values. It's a big concert, and it can't be left up to individuals too. This is where I see religion for sure. It was the technology that was invented to coordinate these masses of people, because at some point populations grew to these huge, crazy amounts that never had to coordinate together before.
Yeah.
So religion was first technology to achieve something like that, because without it, would still be the little clans warring with each other.
And and we see this happening now, right? With this breaking apart of cohesion. And we talk about postmodernism, right? The idea that, oh, every truth is valid. Well, that doesn't help. Even if you believe that, it doesn't help because now we have the fragmentation of religion, of spiritual thoughts. Just nobody is thinking about these things anymore. Morals are out of the window now. With recently what we've seen on in the West of just between was it even accepted? Dude, this is recently, right? We learned that comedian Akash, his wife is
Yeah.
basically cheating on him. That whole thing, bro, it's just like it shows that the society allowed this to happen
And then just
because
one among thousands.
yes, because that woman was not shamed at all.
No, nothing.
There's no repercussion for her doing all of that, meaning that to her it's like, yeah, I can do whatever I like. Nobody gonna do nothing to me. I mean,
Which means
imagine
that marriage just doesn't. It's nothing. It doesn't mean anything then.
no,
If that's
there's
your
no
partner in life and that's
right.
how they behave towards you, then what's the point, right?
Yeah, it's just like there's no shame anymore. That's the problem. When people stop shaming these behavior, they're gonna do it, right? They're like, oh, no, there's no consequences for this, so I'm gonna do that. I mean, granted, look, if we stand at purely her perspective in her own selfish kind of uh, uh from her
But
perspective,
that's
this is the
literally all
best.
it
This
is,
is
right? Just selfishness.
selfishness. Like I want everything. I will take everything from this guy, but I don't really love him. I don't really, so
And
I'm gonna
you
screw
don't
other
care
people.
about essentially anything about your own behavior even impacts it, because you could be just a self-interested, egotistical person, but with a little bit of respect for others, you don't have to be like, why would you be so openly? That's the mystery, right? It's only because
They can get away with it.
there's no repercussions,
Zero
and you
repercussion.
literally can get away with it. But why would you think that that's good? Because I mean, surely you understand that at the very least the other person is going to be very hurt by this, and not only
But
like in all
look,
kinds of ways, because his reputation is getting destroyed.
but the sheer uncaring nature of it, like she just does not care about him at all. Like she despises him, right? It's like even
That's the
with
mind
him
blowing
giving him
part.
giving her all the money, all the stuff like that, but she does not respect him. That's the thing. When you see somebody beneath you, you don't even consider them, right? That's what's happening. You don't even consider what the guy was doing, you know? So she just felt like I'm the queen. I can, I should be able to get away with it, with anything. But
But
the stupid
again,
part,
it's so delusional at that point because that's not, yeah, you're not a queen because that's not
but the dumb
how
thing is,
queens.
look, if she was smart, she basically is brain rot, like stupid. Because think about it. If she was smart, she will play the situation. She will act like the faithful wife, right? Get all
Exactly.
the
That's what I was
money.
saying. Like, you don't have to
You can act
be,
it up. You can act it up
yeah,
like
you
I'm
can
the
just
faithful
enjoy
wife,
what you have, essentially.
and while screwing other guys. That's you could do that, right? And
Even to that
and,
degree, it's
and
understandable, I guess.
launch her own career, and everybody will love her because like, oh yeah, she's great. She's a faithful wife to Akash, and then now she's trying to do her own thing. She seems so humble, blah 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 blah. And once she has her own career, kick the guy out. That's a smart move, right? Now she's basically doing all this dirty laundry, airing these dirty laundries, like thinking that's a good idea. That's the worst thing you can do, right? You tarnish your own reputation. You tarnish the.
Yeah, the only I like see I can't even wrap my mind around why you would do something like that because like
It's
what do you think is
stupidity.
gonna happen? Do you know what's gonna like essentially I think it only means that she's so bored that she's purposefully trying to
Right.
ruin her husband's life and just I don't know, go on it.
Not thinking. That's how dumb it is. Like you're not even using your head to think about what situation you are in or how this is gonna turn out. No forethoughts, no even thinking about the repercussions. Because if you think about it, it's like, of course, this is how people will react, right? Yes, you can say that, oh, people don't are not as moral as people before, but they still dislike this. Nobody likes this shit.
No, especially in the men's world. Like I mean, you saw like how much content this started generating
So,
right away
right away. Oh
because
man.
to the bigger degree is because Akash was involved in these discussions with other dudes who essentially have been telling him all about
Yeah, like
the
bro,
dangers
you know?
of female hypergamy essentially, and he'd be like, nope, nope, I married a sweetheart, everybody's a virgin, it's all so good, and it's just that's just not the thing. That's just not how it works. So even for that reason, you know that like I just don't know why it's happening. It's so wild. It's not right from any way you look at it. It doesn't make sense because in an ideal world you'd just be in a happy relationship where a woman is happy and a man is happy and they have a respect for each other and
No,
there is love and there is just there's baseline respect essentially that has to be there. Without it,
but
nothing works.
you see, but the thing is, right? There's one thing you can say about what you believe, and there's the actual reality, right? The
Right.
reality is hypergamy is real. All these things are it just this is like classic showcase of what's the female behaviors, certain female behaviors, right? That is a phenomenon. Again, I'm not saying all women are like will be like this, but there's something going on here, right? That
Yeah,
you
it
cannot
happens
not
for
see.
some reason.
You can. This is what the red pill is supposed to be like. You need to see this. We're not telling you anything like people are not telling you how to live your life, but it's like you got to see this is a thing, right? You got to
There's
understand
something
that
that can happen. Yeah.
this is something you got to study. It's not just like you believe in your own world, like oh yeah, we are like blue pill
But I wonder
Kool-Aid.
what it is even in the framework of through the lens of hypergamy why it's happening because Akash is essentially is a huge success by lots
Yeah.
of metrics. So what is even the problem then? Like what is the crux of the issue
I
for that woman to not be
okay.
happy as they
I
are?
This is not scientific, but in my opinion, I
Yeah.
think is just pure greed. Like she want everything. Okay, so
But that's insane.
obviously, the Kosh got the money. He can afford her all the lifestyle, but she is not attracted to him. So he is basically the
But
safe
what
choice.
else is needed for the attraction? What's missing?
All the frat boys that she was screwing, she liked those chads, right? White chads. Like she does not want to. Yeah, exactly. That's
So
what it was.
that means it's purely sexual then. It's just
I mean, she want
sexual
everything
hunger.
because look, part of it is like she sees basically attraction cannot be negotiated, right? You are attracted to whatever you're attracted to. So she is not attracted to Akash. The only reason she's with him is just for the money, right? So a lot of these
Yeah, I
women,
guess I don't know about
a
the
lot of these
history
women do
there.
the same thing. Right? A lot of these women do the same thing. They're like, they, in their early years, they go through the carousel, doing whatever they like. But eventually, because no guys choose her as a partner, she had to settle down, right? So she chose the rich guy, the guy who's the beta, the nice guy, the one that has the ability to earn money, but then she's not attracted to because she want the lifestyle to continue. You see what I'm saying? Pure greed. That's all it is to me. That's how I see it. It's like she
So
both
it's
want the
interesting that men can be huge, successful, rich
and
people
and
and
still
still be considered like
fail.
subpar by
So
women
yeah,
in I don't know what that category is. Like, what is that? Is that just the amount of testosterone and aggressiveness? Like, what is that
part of
manifesting?
it. But then you see the opposite end. All the Chaz are just bad people, more or less, right? They're like wife beater. Okay, I'm generalizing. Maybe I shouldn't say that, but I'm just saying all the kind of the really bad boys that they
I
want
think it's
are
some kind
bad
of
boy for a
aggressiveness
reason.
level.
Right.
Yeah.
Aggression, sort of like, like they say, being a man, you're able to kind of like walk around, basically push people, being pushy with other people. It's fake confidence, right? They think that's aggressiveness seems is confidence, it's not. But it's that kind of inner, I don't know, like the primal drive, right? You see a man like that, all muscled up, all like big guy and aggressive. You're like, okay, that feels like a man, right? Quote unquote man.
So
But then
it is animal stuff then.
animal
Literally
style.
animal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what it is, right? It's like, look, everything is being equal. Like man does the same in terms like we all like hot women, right? So women who are not hot in our
Yeah. It's
eyes, we don't.
biological drives. Yeah.
So I know it's unfair either way. Okay, that's just how things are, right? But I'm just saying here that in this case, these women are basically just very greedy. They're just like, I want everything, you know?
Essentially, they're so, I would use the word delusional because you expect reality to be,
To be a certain way.
I guess,
Yeah.
so accommodating to every single whim that you don't care
Yeah.
about anything else around it.
Right.
You almost like you don't see men as people at that point.
Right.
You know, you
This
consider
is
them
why,
your
look,
wish granters.
we know this, there's data to support this, right? Like we've seen so many of these Tinder, the economy of Tinder is basically all
Yeah,
the
the
women
stats.
are chasing that 1%, right? Even when they themselves are like, okay, let's just be honest, not that good looking, right? And they still think that they deserve that top level guy. That's how
They just
delusional
want
you
what they
are,
want. Yeah, and they don't
right?
care what
But they don't care about
what
reality.
everything else is. Yeah.
They ignore the actual good guy who is actually financially stable and is a good man. They can provide and also are a good person. But no, they don't like it. They don't want it because they want the
And
top
I
guy.
think it's literally just it's an unconscious process because people don't really know what they want from a relationship because
Yes.
really all you need from a relationship is that what I was talking about is a baseline. Because
Yeah.
if you're both intent on respecting and loving each other, that's all you need. But that's not dependent. Essentially, it's as close as possible to the unconditional love, right? Because it's not dependent. Like you can't like, oh, this my guy is out of a job and I'm leaving him because of that. It doesn't work because stuff happens all the time.
Yeah.
Then that's where you have to be your foundation for each other, no matter what. And
This
that is the thing.
it's
So you do
funny.
it for that reason, not for any other reason.
Yeah. And it's funny how that happens. You see, most guys, like we get back down to earth real quick, right? We know our value relatively, right? Like in this
Yeah,
case,
we
like
have to do real stuff in real world
yeah. So
for
this
anything
is
to
why
happen.
for guys it's less likely we're gonna be that delusional, thinking that we can get the hot babes like 10 out of 10. We first thing we consider, oh, am I good enough? Right?
Yeah,
I'm
you
even
actually do have to hit certain, criteria
metrics.
in
Yeah.
order for
But
to be able to do that.
so we like this is how men survive. Like we gauge what the environment is. Because we just naturally understand like okay where I am and where I want to be, that type of kind of metric. But somehow I don't know why some women they can't see it. They're just like,
Well, I think it has to be rooted in biology, right? Its biological reality is different, so they tend to see the world as different. I just will never be able to understand how it is because we literally
it's
live in a different biological reality.
well, everything is nature, so we can
Yeah.
explain it away. But this is just sexual selection, right? This is the selection
But the
pressure.
difference
It's
is that like they're obvious, right? Like they're so obvious because we notice it because our interactions with men and women are that different and the behavior observed from the side are that different. But the funny part among all of this is that essentially women's whole game is denial. You can't call them
yeah,
out on this. You can't talk to
yeah,
anybody and say, like, hey, this is what you're doing, right? No, never. The whole
yeah.
thing is
One
just,
of the
what are you talking
tactic,
about? No,
one of the
no.
tactic is pure denial. Just nope, don't want to see it. That's not happening. That's not real.
And that's the craziest part, which means it's like those type of women are not interested in consensus reality. They're literally so bent on having things their own way
Yeah,
that they're essentially uncooperative. And that sucks for everybody involved because
that's what
the
happens.
whole of society is about cooperation.
Yeah.
And when you have a whole cluster of a generation, of a culture, and of a society just check out like that, it's like, no, 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 I want things this way. Yeah, but look around you. We can't have this right now. This is a
No.
different time and a different
And you see,
world.
look, I will say this, like, this is not just purely women's fault, it's also men's fault as well, to a certain extent, because of simps, right? The rise of simps, oh my God, it destroyed everything. So it's not all the way, like, think about it. Think about incentive, right? Why is it so many women are doing OnlyFans? Because it earns money, because there is simps out there who can be monetized. If all men stop being simps and be like, nope, not doing that. I have enough
But this
self-respect. I'm
is
not doing
the
that.
chicken and the egg, right? Where
Then
what
they will not be these women will not be doing OnlyFans. There's no money because there's no simp there to simp on them, right?
right? So
So
then why are
you,
men being simps?
I don't know what happened with men. Okay, I don't know what's happening. That why the hell are we doing all these self-disrespecting shit that's happening? Like back then, no, nothing like this happens. Like why is it that modern day this is happening,
Yeah,
right?
this is a can be a crazy goose chase for the chicken and an egg because like I'm still like as if you start tracing it. First of all, this whole thing is possible because there is internet.
Yeah,
So
there's that.
internet introduced these whole virtual worlds, these new types of parasocial relationships, which is just insane, which essentially allows people, I guess, to have a certain illusion of them being in a relationship with a woman so hot that they would never even be
Yeah,
able to talk to in the real world. So that's the
because
allure, it's the fantasy.
yeah, but you see, I'm this is one thing I kind of I don't know if I should say pat myself on the back for is like I was never popular with the ladies, like never. Okay, and there was a time when I was young, I was really desperate. So I'm like, when I talk to women, I stand with you. I'm that kind of male feminist. Now in retrospect, I'm so disgusted that I did that. But back in the day, I was so starved for that attention. I'm like, I will say anything. I'll say that I'm a feminist.
Yeah,
I'll
so
say that I
you would
support
try to
your
support,
cause. Try
yeah.
to, but that's exactly the wrong thing because women hate these male feminists. Like they hate it. Like this is not a manly way to act. Okay, this is not their ideal of a man who I agree with them.
Because
You
essentially the
know?
whole thing is a big shit test.
Yeah, and that's not passing the test. So, but what I was saying, I'm patting myself on the back is like I actually start realizing
What was
what
happening?
what was happening or where I went wrong because I was drinking the Kool-Aid because in school that's what happens, right? This is the culture around you, and then you start, oh yeah, I support female rights, blah 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 blah, because you think that that's like a not to say that there aren't inherent good points that they're pointing out, but the thing is, this is not your place to say. You are a man, right? Whatever they are doing, that's up to the women, not up to you. You're not a woman, so you don't know shit. Which is why like I don't know, I'm part of that generation of men who just checked out. I'm like, I don't want to deal with this. Peace of mind for me is just like, yeah. I see all this. I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I'm not interested in all that stuff anymore.
It's essentially, it's such a game. It's such a 5D chess that
Yeah. Like,
it.
okay, I am not an incel. I don't hate women, but I just see it for what it is. For myself, I'm like, nah, it's okay. You guys do whatever you like to do. Like this, I don't want this, and that's about it. Like I don't hate them. They can do whatever they like. They're free to make it their own choices. So, if that's kind of how most people nowadays think, then
It's just like there would need to be such a level of alignment with your partner on so many different levels that, like, yeah, also I don't know how to
how to even,
to
how's that
get
even gonna
that,
work?
essentially, because that's what you would want. Because I can't imagine being with a person with whom I'm not aligned on. I mean, so many things are important to me on a
Yeah.
spiritual level, on a philosophical level, even on a political level. I'm so, I'm so apolitical that it's just, for most people, it's a sin, essentially. So that limits me so much, not only in terms of women, but just in terms of people in general with whom I can talk about. Because if it's not aligned on any of those fronts, it essentially would mean that she would have, like, my partner would have to pull me into her own worlds in which I am just not interested in doing anything. It's just doing a bunch of stuff that I'm not interested at all.
Yeah. So, realized people, highly spiritual people are mostly solitary because they couldn't, it's
Yeah,
just
that's
like
what I keep reading about as well.
once
Yeah,
you
seems that way.
realize, then you can't go back. It's not like you can just decide, oh, I mean, not to say you can't have a relationship with a woman or whatever, or vice versa, but it tends to just make you think more about, like, yeah, just you're not going to be as compatible, right? Because once you realize about in your spiritual journey, sometimes it's just like that's not compatible with how you think, and not only the fact that it's very hard to find common core these days, especially these days. To me, my philosophy at this is like it's whatever. I don't care. I just live the way I feel like, and that's all. I don't even consider that. Like, I like to discuss these things as a philosophy, as a sort of things of discussion, but like, I don't really personally have that much of a feeling for any of this. I don't have a stand, so to speak. I'd be like, oh, this is interesting. This is happening, but I don't really care how much effect it really affects me because, like, hey, I'm just trying to basically I'm just judge everything according to what I like, what I don't like, and that's about it. So, I don't really add any further judgment to it, but yeah, that's just been what's happening, right?
Yeah, but it's kind of, I don't know, crazy to see all of this on the sidelines, right? Like things like that are happening to
But then
these.
you see it very clearly.
I mean, it's undeniable because you literally see these huge public figures and you literally watch their disillusionment
Yeah.
in real time on their own experience of, like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, things are not the way, So it will be very kind of interesting to see how a person like Akash would deal with something that, like, because this is changes upon you, brother. So
Yes.
you're gonna have to deal
You
with
have
this
to do
one way or
something.
another. Yeah.
Like, it's not my place to say, but if I were him though, first, I'll divorce her right away.
Yeah, it's
This is a
not.
PR disaster. Like, this is like literally for his own career. This is like
Yeah.
you need to put distance between you and her, like right now, you know?
Unless you transcend the ego so much that you just completely don't care, but that's a big jump because essentially, yeah, it's kind of your ego is involved in there because especially when you're having these relationships with all these other people, whether you transcended stuff or not, the other people will judge you.
Yes. That's
But
what happens.
this is where it's kind of interesting because if you do truly transcend it, other people will essentially will not be able to make fun of you. They'll be like, this guy like doesn't give a shit. So if you found a way for it to not
Well,
bother,
I
but
don't
then I don't
you
see
can
how it
be
would
well,
work.
for him, he can be unbothered by it. He can continue to go on as, but the heckling will not end.
Yeah, the heckling will not
Everybody will
end,
still point to him like you are the simp guy. That's it. Now that's his reputation.
but
So
that's like depends on how he will interpret the whole thing for himself. So for example, I mean, no, I guess I can't come up with a
because okay,
with a
like
lens on it that
look,
is.
he can be as sort of meditative about it as he can, And he can interpret this in his own head about, okay, I don't care.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
from now on, his whole career, if he doesn't make any changes, this will be the thing he's known for. Like everybody will point it out. It just because you're not. It's because I don't know. Maybe people want him to change or something. Like basically, people are pressuring him to do something, or you know,
But
because if he
essentially,
stops doing,
because you live in a society, you can't be completely free of
free from it.
society's
Yes.
rules and behavior. So first of all, as comedians, yeah, of course, everybody gonna roast you on this because this is a
Yeah.
premise now. This is
Yeah.
a rich premise because of the whole thing, right? So that, but then if you don't essentially defend your boundaries and your respect, then yeah, nobody likes that.
Yeah.
Everybody will
So,
think that you
well,
are you
he
will
will.
lose a ton of respect from actual people
Yes,
who
that's what's
you're,
happening now.
have relationships with.
Yeah. So now he's gonna lose people. He's gonna lose subscribers. He's gonna lose fans, and not only that, you know, people will continue to heckle him for this if he doesn't change. If he does not do something in which it answers people's kind of. I know it's kind of a. Some people will be like a dick about it, right? Continue to kind of hackle for this because they want an answer or whatever. So he almost cannot just continue on with this without doing any changes because he will be forced to do it because he's going to lose his fan base. He's going to lose a whole bunch of, you know, so unless he want to lose his net worth, like, and just still continue with this because he will be this.
But it's not going to work either way, right? Because then
yeah. So the only thing
she will divorce him.
Yeah. The only thing I can see, like I said, if I were him, divorce her right away. And since I am the comedian in this case, I will spin on it. It's like, you know what, guys, you're right. I'm a fucking. This is basically what it's gonna be, right? Like self-deprecating, but like, yeah, I see you guys are right. Like the Jesus Christ, right?
Because
that's
I
the
mean,
only.
how else can you interpret this, right?
Yeah.
Because imagine you lived this whole life, you're a successful comedian, and then for no freaking reason, your wife with whom you like, your partner, your life partner, does this to you, and now you have to deal with this in your life.
It's not for no
Why
reason.
Why can't
though.
we have nice things? Why couldn't you just be happily ever after?
It's not
everything was there.
It's not for no reason though, because a lot of people are saying, "Well, you chose her and you ignored the red flag. You were not, you know." So if I were him, I'll be like, I'm come out, be like, "Yeah, everybody roast me. I need roasting. Yeah, you guys are right." That's the only way to spin it, and then people be like, "Yeah, okay, he learned." You know, he become, and maybe now what he could do is he gonna start doing red pill stuff now with the jokes, and then that's a complete change. And then people be like, okay, yeah, that's interesting. Like you learn your lesson, you learn what it is. Because you can connect with other men that way, right?
Yeah, like once you live through something like that, you don't have a choice but to adjust your worldview, right?
Yeah, and with the shift of the opinions these days, I think that's a smart move. You want to be kind of come out of this with new learnings. You want to be like, okay, but yeah, you guys are right. And clearly everybody else is right. This is not somebody you want to be with, no matter how you want to slice it, right? This amount of disrespect. If you continue with this, you have no self-respect and you're going to lose everybody in your life because nobody will respect you, you know, for just being even after you see it, you don't change. That's not going to fly. You're going to be ostracized, you know, especially somebody like him, a public figure with something like this. Like you either you make fun of yourself and change and come out of it with this is actually good he can do good PR out of this if he just decided, you know what, cut my loss, okay, whatever, divorce her ass. That's it. I don't care how much money I'm gonna lose, but I need
that's the only move that makes sense.
You want to salvage your reputation. You can't just like, you know, do you want to continue to be a comic? If you want to be, then you have to change.
But just imagine dealing with that level of disrespect. Imagine you're married and then your wife does this.
I cannot.
What are you, because it's essentially, it's so basic of a concept to even like, how do you explain it to a grown-ass person that, hey, what's going on here, buddy?
Dude, did you see
what are we doing?
Some of the clip, she just outright in his face, in the same podcast with him there, saying all the stuff that she was saying. Oh my God, like really, is somebody really that tone deaf? Like,
yeah.
I don't care what you feel. If you can actually feel like that, sure, but like you don't do that in public, you know?
Yeah.
It's
It
like,
goes back to the like essentially boundaries, right? There have to be boundaries where I mean, I guess well, I know there are all kinds of relationships out there and people live in open relationships and they're fine with all of that, but I have no idea how that would work because if there is the whole kind of concept of ego is that there are boundaries to everything, to your ego, my ego, how we interact. Like I can't just do random stuff. I can do stuff to you that like you will get really uncomfortable real fast, okay? Easily, and you'll feel it like, oh, no, 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 that's we don't do that around here.
don't go there, okay? Because I know the possibilities. I mean, don't give me that anxiety, okay? Like, oh my God.
Exactly, like which is just an example, but this is everybody has those boundaries. Like nobody's like you can't like do whatever you want. Essentially, that's the point, right? You can't just like for the for any reason, like, oh, it's fun, yeah, yeah, but according to you, which is actually a good segue to the my friend who was visiting Japan uh,
Oh, right,
to
yeah.
yeah to participate in another friend's wedding there. Came back a couple of weeks ago, and I heard her story about that. It
Oh
was
no, what happened there? Is it an oh no or is it an oh yes?
so a little bit of backstory. Like the friend who was getting married is he's a very kind of like ethical and moral person, and he really likes rules, and everything is more or
Okay,
less kind of black and white for him, right?
okay.
So the Japanese society is actually really
It's
the
really gray
perfect fit for
or
him
no? Okay,
because
yeah, black and white.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
he is yeah, he likes
Rules are
rules,
rules.
he
Yeah.
likes social conventions, and it's kind of a big problem for him whenever anybody doesn't follow it. So
Okay.
he not only he essentially he calls it out. He's like, "Okay, don't do that." And my friend who went to with him and her boyfriend to visit their wedding, she is essentially hyper individualistic and very and doesn't care about social
That's
norms and
interesting.
conventions. So that was the recipe, right?
Oh, that's just oh no, this is the bad.
And
This is gonna go bad.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Essentially, some like whether it was because they've been friends for a few years, like they know each other really well. But interestingly enough, in Japan, that she was just being herself essentially, right? But because they're in Japan with the far more strict rules in society, he was being triggered much more, like with her behavior.
In
So she would be
public,
lit.
right?
Yes. So he would be like getting
The shame,
visibly. Yeah, he would be getting like shamed for her. That he would ask her, like, "Can you like not do that? Can you like not stand on the bench with your shoes? Like, can you just not? Can you just not be a child? Can you like be a normal adult right now,
bro.
please? We're in Japan."
That's ironic, right? A Japanese girl, but like she's just as un-Japanese as is
No, no, that's
possible.
that's that's my friend, the friend who's not Japanese.
Wait, I thought the Russian guy, is marrying the Japanese girl. No,
Yes, yes. But he invited a friend.
the friend
Yeah,
was not being
yeah, yeah,
observant. I
yeah.
thought it was the girl
No, no,
he's
no,
marrying who's like this kind of individualistic kind of black horse.
no, no. My friend, my
That would be
friend.
funny though.
Yeah.
Imagine a Japanese girl, but she's like, I don't care.
No, yeah, that doesn't happen. I don't think that happens.
Okay, okay,
Yeah,
I
the
see.
Japanese girl is normal Japanese girl.
Okay,
But
okay.
yeah, but the friend was behaving in the
Ah, right.
just, aloof fashion, just being who she is. But it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
such a
yeah.
big trigger for him that he was like, can you like, because they're hanging out, right? They're exploring Japan. They're just trying to enjoy the culturally. But essentially, how she's behaving is so out of the norm there that it's just, he just couldn't even be in the vicinity. But it also from the perspective of kind of that rambunctious friend and her boyfriend, he was overdoing it. He was essentially trying to police her behavior like way too much. He was concentrated on following rules and conventions to such a degree where even his fiancée, who is Japanese, even she was like, yeah,
Yeah, don't do that.
he's he's overdoing it. Like he's spoiling, like just spoiling having a good time. So whether it was stress or whatever, it's kind of bumped up that behavior, right? And they literally got into fights. After which, like after the whole trip ended, they essentially on no speaking terms. like
What?
my friend and that guy who got married, they got
Whoa.
into such shits based on essentially just that, just her behavior, that after the trip ended, he like sent her a message, just a huge wall of text saying all the things, you
Goodbye.
know. Yeah, yeah, and she had to reply, but essentially not nice things, right, that they told each other. But the paradox is among all of this is the perspective, because from his perspective, he's absolutely right, and from her perspective, she, like when I heard the way she described it, yeah, you can find a way to just describe it that way as well, because yeah, she's just being a person. She's not necessarily hurting anybody. Yeah, she's being kind of active and this, I guess, not as considerate of a person, but it wasn't like a huge problem for anybody. But yeah, it's kind of difficult for me to understand like who to agree that is the right in the right here. But I also know that she told me a few other stories that she literally got in trouble in Japan because I think she went to some sauna place and she was trying to like use her own slippers, and the people there, essentially the rules were so strict that they
Right.
just would not let her use them. But she's like, I can't walk on the floor, it hurt my feet. So she would it's a situation where like immovable object means an unstoppable force, because
Yeah.
the people
Don't
at the sauna, they were like, no, we don't do that around right here, because like the rules, it's Japan, it's rules, and we do that this way, no exceptions. And she could not comprehend this
comprehend the
concept
fact.
of no exceptions, because in her
I'm
life,
the
in her
exception.
culture,
I'm the
yeah,
exception.
exactly. And that's what the way she lives her life is like, I'm the exceptions always. And it was such a clash that was like, yeah, like this is not gonna work. And she herself like admitted that like, yeah, Japan would not be a country for me.
Okay, I think she's gonna do a bit better in China, 'cause I think China is a little bit more lax about that, like more relaxed about it. This is
Yeah,
part of the thing. A lot of other people go to China. One of the thing they say comparatively with Japan is that yeah, Chinese people are more friendly. They're more relaxed. They're more free
more chill,
form,
right?
more chill, more free form. I can do whatever. Like going out to eat all like every day. Like, hey, let's hang out or whatever. But the Japanese is like, which date is this? I'm gonna have to put it on my calendar. Like
Yeah, and they're
exactly
just there's
what
so much
time
form
and
there, right? There's
yeah,
attire, there's like the fact that you can't have tattoos. If you want to go on this, you have to cover them. There's just so many
yeah,
rules and
rules.
conventions, and something they noted, that my friends, when they were visiting, essentially, that those rules that are intuitive to Japanese, but there's essentially so many unspoken ones and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
many
yeah.
combinations and
You
so
won't
many
even
factors that you
you
have to
only even
know, that you just would never know,
yeah.
and nobody tells you. That's why, like, yeah, it makes sense, like for that people to live their
It's
own
funny,
lifestyle.
man. It's
It's,
like
yeah, it's very very
imagine
funny.
yourself first step into Japan, and then the reaction is, "Oh, shameful display."
Yeah, no, what are you doing, bro? You can't do that.
Yeah,
It's
anything you
that.
do is shameful, man. It's shameful. You
But
just
it's
don't
kind of
know.
like a paradox. I mean, I can completely see that essentially Japanese people would just want to live in Japan, populated by Japanese people, live in a Japanese way of life.
Yeah, like they can't,
But
right?
that can also be said about any country. That's the crazy part about globalization, is that we're all like coming into each other's countries. We're completely mixing everything.
Yeah,
And it's almost like, kind of like, you can't really live in a homogeneous society anymore. They're just, because of everything is mixing up. Because just society consists of so many tourists, like essentially the permanent tourists in your country. There are always like millions of tourists in your country,
yeah.
that even by that alone, it will be changing.
Yeah, but it's gonna be influenced by this kind of globalized culture, I guess. So no country are gonna be so esoteric, as in, well, maybe with exception of Japan, because they still are having all those, rules and this. But even that is kind of corroding, right? With all the tourists coming in and all that stuff is
Yeah,
changing
the
the way.
culture is still being changed. So
Yeah.
probably with time, it's going to be less and less in Japan, because there's no other way. It's going to erode. That's how culture changes. People
Yeah,
change,
with
information changes, priority changes.
but
If young people are doing stuff that they like that they borrowed from US, now the culture drifts towards that.
it's pretty much like the modernity is basically the Western way of life, right? Even in
Yeah.
China, even in Japan, you see people wearing suits. You see all
Yeah.
the, so these adoptions are across
Dude,
the board.
there's so many English words in Russian
Same
these
with
days that
in
I'm like,
Chinese, same thing. We
the
have,
funny thing is that when I left the country, there wasn't
wasn't that
that much.
much.
It was just like
Yeah, yeah,
older Anglicism and so older words that were
yeah, yeah.
borrowed
But
a
now
long time
it's,
ago. But now there's so much that it cuts my ear because I
yeah,
haven't been
part of that.
keeping up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, because I developed my language and speech like 20 years ago, when I left the country.
yeah, exactly.
So now Russian people with whom I speak to even online,
You don't even
they use
understand what they're
English
saying.
words in Russian speech. No, I understand what they're saying because I know English,
Oh, okay,
but
right.
I don't speak that way. If I'm using Russian, I'm just using
You're,
Russian, but
yeah,
they
you're not using that word.
completely mix it up. And
Yeah,
it's just, to me, it's cringe because I'm like, what the hell is that? This is so weird. But to them, it's cool. Like, because to them, I guess they're signaling that they understand English.
right. It's more of a globalization, right? Which is, I guess Russia is trying to pull back now with the whole political situation, with the conflict that's going on. And that's the other interesting thing I see, that all these ebb and flow. A lot of people are asking, okay, is history, I know this sounds like a tangent, but like, is history influenced by great man, or are they just like part of the ebb and flow of history? And it's kind of a really interesting question, because now if you think about Russia, for example, what Putin is doing is he's completing his story arc, you know like, he, as the leader of Russia, he is thinking about this whole conflict with Ukraine, as sad as it is. I think for him, from his perspective, is completing the quest that was a long time coming for Russia for a while, right? Historically. This is why he's always talk about history. In the interview is funny, right? He will be going on and on about the history of Russia and this and that, according to what's happening now. And it's funny that he does that is only because he sees this as his, before I die, I'm gonna complete this quest for Russia. In his mind, this is what's happening. And along with that, you are carrying an entire culture to a different direction, right? The future of Russia is a completely different direction than what was came before. Since we were talking about culture and how interchangeable sometimes these things are, but just the
Yeah, it's definitely of
influences,
a flow.
yeah, but the influences of one man, right? One man can change the direction of how people think about themselves, because right now in Russia, there's a whole wave of patriotism going on, right? People were, whether you call that propaganda, whatever, but there's a whole section of people be like, yeah, we're doing the right thing, blah, 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 all that kind of rhetoric. It is manipulation, right? You manipulate a
It's always propaganda, yeah.
society, whole society for the goal of, you tell them this is good for us. This is the historical goals that we have. And you see all these countries doing the same thing, right? They're all trying to reclaim past glories, or, yeah, so that kind of goes into the culture itself and how it changed, because it has to react to other foreign influences, right? Because right now, for example, it's happening with China and Japan. Currently, because of the rhetoric of what the Prime Minister of Japan said regarding Taiwan, now China is like, okay, we won't accept this. Now we're gonna be forceful with you. And all these sanctions that China put on Japan is costing them, I think, what
So
was
like,
it?
you're not aligned with us, right? They're like, they're
Yeah,
gonna
like,
cost you.
because in the past few days, Japan's GDP fell by 0.5% because of this current thing. Because China started sanctioning Japan, and we're gonna cut tourism, advising Chinese people not to go to Japan. You can refund your air tickets if you already have them,
Wow.
and deeming Japan unsafe for Chinese people. And even that by itself, it hit their GDP by
Yeah,
0.5%
because
just
there are a
by
lot of
that.
Chinese people.
Because they spend money. They go to Japan for
Yeah.
tourism and they spend all the money. It's how interesting how things like that just changes everything.
Well, that's kind of cool. You wield real potential and power
Power
when you
over,
have that many people participating in other countries' economies. You can
yeah.
like, hey, we can withdraw all these people, buddy. We have that
So
power to do that.
so now it's funny because now, like, of course, we're on the sideline watching this. We're just kind of
Yeah,
like
yeah.
snacking on this. This is interesting. Oh, you know. But what happened essentially is this political struggle, right? This new prime minister rise because of the Japanese right wing kind of parties, because they're more for, I guess, nationalism and all that. But
Hmm.
because the problem was the China Japan relation is very complicated because of what happened in the past.
Right.
So she said this. The Chinese take this as provocation. You're
Hmm.
saying you are going to involve in our homely dispute. So imagine your neighbor come into your house, be like, "Oh, you guys are fighting. I'm going to be part of this."
Yeah, yeah,
No,
yeah.
it's like, no, you. This is my house. As
Again,
far
it's
as
about
China
boundaries and
boundaries, right?
respect.
As far as China is concerned, the issue of Taiwan is belong to China. So you're not to be interfering with this. Like, however we want to deal with this is how we want to deal with this. But then Japan is like, no, we're gonna come in, and this is the we got to have a group discussion. It's like, no, this is not your home. Why are you getting involved, right?
Well,
So
this is interesting though, right? Because everything is always like that. Like it's someone is having this claim, but then it's only their own decision interpretation and only desire of it, right? And that
yeah,
if other people like, okay, we're contesting this claim, you are now our rivals. That's all it
right,
is. There's no really right or wrong. It's just again
yeah.
competition.
So it's like everything is political, and this
Yeah.
is what happened was the Russo-Ukrainian war, right? For Russia, they're like, this is our internal dispute, or at least they think it that way, like between Slavs. And then the West is like, no, 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 that's no, no, no. You're invading another country. We're gonna get involved in this, right? So you can say whatever you like, but the actual things are being determined on the ground, right? So the same idea with China and Japan now is like, well, I don't know. Nobody knows how far this is going to go, but the Japanese prime minister, she is in a difficult position because her base is all like anti-China and sort of like, hey, we got to be like Japan number one,
Right.
right? So if she starts saying to backtrack, then their base is not going to be happy. You're not going to be prime
Yeah.
minister that
She will
long
lose
anymore.
face.
You lose face, you lose your support because you're not being hard line enough, right? But at the other hand, China is dealing all these blows against you, sanctions, this and that. It hurts, right? Economically,
Yeah,
and this is
will
going
be
to cause
real
more problem than.
reportions.
So now what do?
But
Everybody else just
so
sit on the
this is an
sideline.
example of how power works, because you have to understand how power works, because that showcases that prime minister did not foresee far enough. They did not understand that the direction of power and what can be done towards them. So you can't like come to a table of big whales and players and like, oh, I have a suggestion. If you don't have the collateral, the liquidity, the
Yeah,
leverage, then
you got
you
nothing.
don't have the
You
power.
don't do
Yeah,
that. You don't.
like others will exert their power on
Yeah,
you because you're messing with their interests. That's just how it works. So it's
yeah.
very important to understand where you stand in the order of power. You can't just like come up to the game with the water gun and expect what treatment. Nobody's gonna listen to you. That's
Yeah.
just how it works.
Especially given what happened with the US with China. They just had a recent talk, right? Be like, okay, we're gonna stop this trade war and everything. Meaning that the US kind of lost that argument with the whole tariff. So if that happened to the US, Japan, you are kind of subsumed under on the influence of the US. You think if you imagine, right, if your boss got beaten back, you think you can do better, right? Your boss got slapped, and then you think you can do better, right? You have more power than your boss to do more damage. Like you're not gonna. This is why China continue with the kind of hawkish rhetoric. It's just like, yeah, we're not even afraid of the U.S. now. You think we're afraid of you doing it, and especially with Japan, with with the past kind of historical, it's a mess, right? Because these two people hate each other. It's like because of what happened in World War II. So basically, right now, China is united against Japan. They're like the people say yes, go beat them up, right? We have passed debt that you haven't paid us yet, okay? Like, this is debt in blood, right? It'd be like, you killed so many of our people. We still hate you for that. And you didn't apologize for any of it. So we already hate you. So we want to fight you. And so the people agree, and then the government's like, "Yep, we're not backing down. We're gonna sanction you even more because unless you back down, you take the work back, or otherwise you're
And
gonna continue."
again, the previous topic we discussed is at play that if something like, just an example, because the whole world, I see it like as this one big moving model essentially. But if Japan weakens enough, stuff can happen to it as well.
Stuff can happen. This is what the Chinese were saying. Like, hey, according to what happened in World War II, after the end of the war, we as the victorious party, we still have essentially rule over you. The only thing was because U.S. step in. And so the Chinese are saying, hey, if you can't contain yourself for security reasons, we have every right to occupy
Right.
your country to stabilize because you are the losing side. We have the moral high ground basically. Like, you lost that war, right? You still owe us certain amount of, that you do deny and what have you. So it's like, yeah, even on a legal basis, I think China has the kind of the upper hand in this case. But imagine, right, if everything falls, if there's a power vacuum, or if somehow the US aren't able to protect Japan as much, then China could just use force, and that'll be that'll be another. I mean, nobody thought the Russo-Ukrainian war gonna happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody thought that was gonna happen. When it happened, people were like, "What the hell?" Like, nobody ever thought Russia was gonna do that, but they did it, and they're still going on. So to say that, oh, it's never gonna happen to Japan, it's never gonna happen to in the Pacific, I don't know, man.
Things
The
change all the time.
the table I
People
already set.
change, situations change. Yeah. Things are always in flux. And like this move by China that you talked about kind of makes me think that essentially this is a demonstration, both a demonstration of power, but also you demonstrate how serious your intent is and how serious you are with your words. Because yeah, you could choose to not do anything, you could choose to talk this and that, but taking like a swift, definitive action like that, people are faced with a like, okay, this is,
Consequences of that.
yeah, there
Yeah.
are consequences, there are
Actual
boundaries, and
change.
then now I have to deal with this
Yeah.
actual problem
So
that I made for myself with my behavior.
yeah, so like, the Japanese stock market, right? All of I think Japan Air, their stock fell like by a pretty big margin just because of the news, right? Like, people aren't flying to Japan, it's from China, and like basically, yeah, like everything is interconnected. So that's the fact, right? Like, just nothing you can do to change that fact that we are more connected because of all the technology and all the world trade and everything, right? So something happened from one part of the world gonna affect, everywhere else. So I think as humanity, really, we need to start thinking about the ramifications of all the actions that we do. And this is juxtaposed with what I was saying about, how the political powerful, they can dictate a lot of things. Like I was saying, Putin was completing his quest for Russia, right? Because Ukraine has always been this kind of headache for them, historically. So the ego of the leader is now synonymous with the country, right?
Hmm.
They want to complete the quest that everybody's saying, hey, because if you go back far enough with history, you can see, okay, we used to control this region and now we lost it, and then these people don't really agree with us, and we always have problems. So for Putin was like, once and for all, I'm gonna destroy the country of Ukraine. This is what he's doing. It's like, we,
Hmm.
we just want this to be the case so that we will never have to deal with this anymore. Now, of course, that's from the Russian perspective. Of course, if you're Ukrainian, you're like, this is disaster. This is not great at all. This is not good, right? But you can argue all you want, but sometimes if you have the force, that's it. And same with China. Xi is want to get Taiwan back. That's his goal. So he's basically like, oh, I see Putin doing his quest. I'm gonna do my quest. I'm like, I'm gonna get Taiwan back before I die. So that's
All
the
these
idea,
guys
right?
and their quests.
But you see, right, the personal ego becomes that of the country because they are the leader. They say things are
Yeah,
done a certain
they have
way.
that actual power to control and centralize efforts and funds and military. Like military is the craziest thing. The fact that you can dispense with the military power that consists of other citizens of your country. Imagine the power of that. It's crazy, man.
Yeah, like you have to go fight. That's it. Imagine living in your own country. It'd be like you are doing your own thing, and all of a sudden this thing happened, and like now you got to go die. You know, you got to go. I mean, maybe not die, but like you got to risk your life for a thing maybe you never
Yeah.
asked for, right? Like I don't. You could be like empathetic about the cause, but then you can't even say that because you're gonna be ostracized and beaten up for saying for not loving the country, right? So world's a crazy place, man. But
You
things
know
are
what I feel
happening,
like
right? So
Putin
that's
and
the kind
Russia
of
must be doing right now? I'm thinking that he's got to be working on preparing like a successor, essentially.
yeah, because he knows it, right? It's gonna happen. So he's trying to get all the ducks in a row, and this is his last hurrah. Like whenever the conflict is gonna end. I mean, we don't know, but it's probably gonna end before he passes. I mean, that's kind of what he wants to, he wants to see this to the end, right? To the point of, I don't know. I don't know what he actually wanted, obviously, like, but it seems like there's a goal in mind, and the military are doing the thing that trying to get to that goal, right? So it's a tragedy, but it's what
Man,
happens.
today's episode was full of political
It's getting
stuff.
political, man. It's getting political this time. Jesus Christ.
Well, I kind of wanted like to do it something like that before, right? I told you that because you are good at kind of assessing and putting these things together. I literally don't pay attention to a lot of this stuff, so
But that's
that's
a
how
good
I learned my
interchange,
news.
right?
Is yeah, I learned my news
It's
from you about the real world.
because that's why I want to discuss it because it's like we're all part of this reality, right? We're all part of as we live now, we are experiencing all these things that happen. So it's not just like I guess I'm not just purely curious about what's happening now, but it's kind of like okay, everything kind of goes into each other, right? The
Yeah,
history, the kind of what's going on right now. And this is also a reflection of the past, and it kind of informs you how you should be thinking about your own life. And this is what we do on this channel, right? It's all these topics can just kind of interweave into this one big understanding, right? Because
yeah,
that's what we're
how
trying to
to
do.
live the life
It's
better.
yeah, and it's not all look, it's all related. You can't just be in a vacuum just talking about this little section of whatever and then not involving all the other things that's happening, right? We're all part of this thing. Sometimes it's very absurd, right? It is absurd. If you think too much about it, it's like, yeah, why is it happening? I don't know. It is happening. Somehow you're compelled to make these things
Yeah,
happen somehow.
but so to me, it does seem like I do see it as this whole one big connected dance because it absolutely is. It's not, but what I'm curious about is how much of it affects you if you're not aware of it. Because, like, as I told you, like, I've been living under a rock essentially for whatever reason. Like, I don't pay that much attention to all these things. But whether I'm because I'm lucky and blessed enough to be able to afford that, or for some other reason, but I don't feel like I'm influenced by all of this stuff. It again, it's a matter of perspective, and you can say that you're just extremely privileged and lucky, etc. Maybe that's the case, but still, it is interesting that it is possible to
It's
live a life like that and not be. Because I could be losing my mind about all these wars right now, you know? I'm half Russian, half Ukrainian, so I could be as depressed as it's possibly to be at this point in my life, but
yeah,
I don't think it would help anybody. So,
yeah. I think again, categorically, we are all affected by war events, right? But to the degree by which it affects you personally, that varies. I think you are right in the sense that yes, perhaps one could say that, oh yeah, we're privileged to not think about it because for a lot of us, this can be the case. Like I don't have to pay attention to this stuff. I can just live my life, watch some funny YouTube videos and whatever, and that's it, right? I don't have to care about it because I mean, does it really affect me? In a way, yes. In a way, not, right? Because it all come down to the economic effect of it. So we are
also, I think
affected.
to a degree, I feel like anything that you get involved, you get
Mm,
somewhat of a choice to get involved,
right,
because I know people who are like constantly embroiled in the news about the
right.
war, talking
Yeah.
about it every time, reposting about it. And I understand that they may have their own valid reasons for doing so. They want to spread awareness. They want to do what they can and provide ammunition against Russia, for example, something like that, right? But still, do you have a moral obligation to do something like
I
that?
think
Is that, you know
it's
what I
a
mean? So
choice.
you get to choose. Yeah, you get to
Yeah.
choose what you're
Because
doing and why.
I remember this story about this female journalist in Gaza, in Palestine, right? She lost her life because of the conflict, but she was determined to show the people what's happening in Gaza. So it's her choice. She told her own kid, like, Mama might not return, right? This is the reality you have to face, but this is so important to me that I still have to go. So it is a choice. She made the choice. She could just be like, I don't want to get personally involved. I just live my life, you know? Yeah, it's sad what happened in Gaza, but whatever. Even if she's Palestinian, she can choose not to. She can just not want to deal with all that. Because she's privileged enough, in that way that she doesn't live there, but she chose to go there, right? She used to be from that place, I think it was. But then she cared enough. She just cared so much about it that she like the world has to see, and then she lost her life. So it's a choice, definitely. Like one can choose not to get involved, but some people they're like no, like they feel an obligation, a moral obligation, if you will, or some kind of like kind of thing that make them decide that way. So yeah, one can live whatever life you want, obviously, and you can go into the mountain basically and just live a completely solitary life.
Yeah.
It's fine. There's
And I'm
no
just thinking about what determines that perspective and that attitude, because sometimes, like, I don't know, I feel like all this involvement with spirituality just gave me this almost like a cursed ability to just zoom out and look at things from a really high point of view, but that completely detaches you from everything. Because when I look at that and look at the war and things like that, you can get involved in it, but that becomes a choice, and just selfish or whatever you call it. Like, I don't want to be involved in war
yeah. I
in
I
any way,
think
shape, or
I
form.
think that
Is that
nobody
just cowardice? What is?
no, I think nobody wants to involve in war. I mean, it's horrible. This is the most horrible thing that could
Yeah,
happen to a human being. I imagine just being on that battlefield right now. My God, you don't even know what's going to happen tomorrow, right? In that kind of hellscape. Nobody wants to be in that. The problem is that we run into is all these kind of, I mean, I don't know. Somehow we as humans, we just can't figure it out, right? It's like, why couldn't we have a talk over like, no, apparently it's not good enough. You can't talk. You can't just have a discussion and figure it out
yeah,
by, it's almost like
yeah. I
you
was just
have to
thinking
be
about
beaten
that.
to
Like,
a pulp.
why do wars, like, how do they start? It's essentially this one party considers that the communication, I guess, is not happening. Essentially, you can't get what you want with words. Like, it
Yeah.
literally is not working. So you
Basically,
literally
they
are
don't get,
like annihilate the opposing force, I guess, or opposing will. But
yeah,
that's
because I don't know, people are so, I guess, yeah, they have their own opinions. They don't agree with this sentiment or whatever. And to a point where, yeah, they don't give an inch. It's like, oh, you want to go? Let's go. I guess it's no different than a bar fight, right? It's in principle, like it's just like, okay, this is a dispute, and then you got emotion behind it too, and then you formulate all these kind of way of thinking and just kind of being kind of kept in that. Like you forgot about, okay, think about this, right? Imagine you forgot the spiritual teaching in a moment of emotion. Like this is what's happening, right? It's like right now, Russia and Ukraine are two brothers. They're fighting against each other to the death, but they forgot we're the same people. We're the same, even the same atom. We're the same, whatever, the universe, right?
yeah,
But
at
you
that
forgot
level,
about
like
it.
the emotion turned into hatred, essentially, right? There's only hatred left, but hatred is what? Hatred is what is that exactly?
It's in this case, it's an illusion. do you really hate that people? Hate those people? I mean,
It kind
where's
of
that?
becomes
Where's the?
as a
It's a
tendency or something.
concept. It's become a
Yeah,
concept. You name all these other people as the enemy. That's it.
it's a stance.
Do
Yeah,
you
you
know the actual
literally.
person? You don't. This is why when actual war happens, the soldier are they have PTSD. Partially is because
Yeah, because
sometimes
eventually it
they don't
catches up
want
with
to
them.
kill that person. That guy didn't do anything to you. Only because your country's saying they're bad, and then you got to kill them. But
Yeah, that's where it's strange because like I can understand a bar fight because you are in the moment and the emotions in the moment. But once the emotions subside, there's no, there shouldn't be. It should be processed. But when you're having a war and it lasts like years, what is it sustained by? It's very strange because, yeah, like we see that right now. Like in Russia, there are many people who don't want to be involved in it and they were forced, and they were
yeah,
protesting and they were kind of arrested. So what is it sustained by? It's it's some kind of it's a ideology essentially.
ideology, yes,
It's ideology that's being enforced by by
but
people who
everything,
have
yeah.
power and who want to control things in a certain way.
Because recently, right, they even arrest some artists just not even overtly singing a song about anti-war or whatever, just kind of adjacently, kind of connected with that kind of message or whatever, and she got arrested just because of singing a song, right? So it's that kind of top-down control regulating thoughts. You cannot think any other
But
way.
I mean, Ukrainians do hate Russians at this point because it's hate as in hate, right? So
I think,
you invaded our country, you're killing us, you're a monster, you're
yeah,
evil.
because as far as how I understand it historically, it's just that Ukraine has always wanted independence ever since like a long time ago, like even back then, even back all the way back to like when Russia was first. That's why they say, right? Oh, we are the Kievan Rus, and you are from Moscow. We're different. We're the first Slav or whatever, right? So you can go all the way back to the beginning. That's how the Ukrainian think of themselves. Like we are independent. We're not Russians. We're
Separate
not.
people, yeah.
They believe in that because of what happened in history. Russia's like, no, I want. I'm the boss now, right? For a
You are
while,
now part of us.
you're now part of us. And then reluctantly, Ukrainian like, well, yeah, you're too strong. I can't beat you. But there's always, anytime there's a national upheaval, the Ukrainians are trying to have independence. They
Mm.
have attempted multiple times, And this is why Russia cites, especially World War II, because when the Germans were coming to attack the Soviet Union, some of the Ukrainians actively joined the Germans because they see them as liberators. Like, oh, finally, we're not controlled by the Soviet Union. So to Russia, from the Russian perspective, these people are always giving us trouble. But that's from the imperial kind of empire mentality, right? So I don't know. Imagine 40K. The emperor says this is all our worlds, but one world, one hive world say no, we don't agree. Like we're our own thing.
Actually, yeah, I was going to bring up that topic at some point because consider this. So the Warhammer Space Marines before the Horus Heresy, the Emperor sent them out into the cosmos to find all the populated planets who were
Yeah,
the humans out there to
right.
bring them into the fold of
Yeah, yeah,
Imperium.
yeah. There
But
you go.
certain but when the Space Marines reached some of these planets, they're
No.
completely different worlds. They essentially have their own culture,
Yeah.
technology, lore. They forgot everything about Imperium, etc. So they're now, for all intents and purposes, of foreign countries, entities,
Yeah,
societies.
entities
And some of them refused.
to join.
Like they refused. Like, no, we don't know
We
who
don't
you
agree
are.
with
Go
you.
away. And they're like, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, that's not an option. You're like, now we and Imperium literally had to eradicate some planets.
Yeah.
Some they had to forcefully occupy because essentially
It's
it's behaving like we're the big guys. You don't know what you're talking about. We have the power. We have the technology. We are humans. You like came from us. You're us. Essentially, it's that, and it's an apt analogy, kind of, right? But
yeah.
who is right and who is wrong? This is
Nobody
interesting.
is right and nobody's wrong, but according to which perspective, right? To
Exactly. It's
the
still just a
imperium of
matter of
man,
perspective.
the emperor, like, his ego is so big about it. It's like, yeah, we're the empire. You know, I want all this. I want this to be
Yeah.
true. I want all this world to be under my control. That's the ego, right? And manifesting as a will of power, you know.
Yeah.
And because he got the Space Marines and they're so good at destroying stuff, like, yeah, go ahead and go do it. What different is that from Hitler's Germany? What difference is that to Stalin's Soviet
Well,
Union?
the claim is slightly different, right? So in this case, I mean, again, it's all debatable, right? Does emperor and empire have the claim on all these planets who are
Yeah,
essentially colonies
but
of the Earth, but no
those
longer see
places,
themselves as
they
colonies?
exactly, they no longer see themselves as part of that. And, like, we want our own freedom or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So why should we agree to your version of the world?
That's the question. Yeah, it's only because the emperor has that vision, and I mean, no, in that world, see, like he has also the most powerful psyker in the world, so he may know things that nobody else
But
knows.
then
So
it's
but
still
he has that grand plan.
right. But then it's still a thing that he want to project into the world, right? So it's his vision that he's trying to bring into fruition. But some other entity, they're not going to agree to that. Like, why? Why should we
Man, I think we
do it
need to have a
your
separate
way?
episode on the Warhammer
A
40K
Warhammer, right?
universe. There's so
You got to
much
teach
lore
me,
that can be.
because you got to teach me, because I'm just a casual. Don't really know the details and
Oh,
all
there's
that,
too
but
much stuff,
that
man,
would be
out there.
fun.
It's like
But I like it because there's so much kind of
a lot of parallels.
parallels to the real world and things that, it's fascinating, But this is what's happening, right? Essentially, it's sad, but the reality is that this is what Russia is saying. Hey, Ukraine, you have always been a problem for me. Even your name is borderland. You were supposed to be, but you see what happens to borderlands is instability, right? Because you border something, other forces can kind of influence it. So Ukraine has always been a problem for Russia, politically, historically, right? Because Russia trying to do the empire thing, right? They're trying to build up this big. So again, it's the ego. Whether that's just one man's leader's ego or an entire nation's ego can be coincide as the same thing. Because people are like, oh yeah, Russia's great. We expanded this big. We're an empire, or we support the czar or whatever it was, right? So, like I was saying, Putin is completing the quest. This has been historically the quest that never got completed, because there's always, okay, maybe periodically they can control Ukraine, but then they
I,
can't.
I don't think it's gonna be completed, man. I don't think it will work.
Well,
With the
but
stand that Ukraine has made,
what
they
I
made it clear that they will not go along with it no matter what.
yes, but what I'm saying is that the quest completion is not the taking over Ukraine. What it is like we are, according from the Russians, from at least Putin's perspective, how he wants this solved, this problem, is basically it's kind of sinister, really. It's like, we're gonna bleed you out. You as a
Yeah.
country are never, ever gonna be a problem for us ever again. Because we're gonna, basically, we'll force all your population to die. All your males, we're gonna deplete your military. You're gonna be so weak militarily after the conflict. We're gonna take part of your land, and like, we don't want the whole of Ukraine. He doesn't want the whole of Ukraine. So he's only gonna be like, okay, I want to control the parts on this side of the river. That's it. I think that's the goal. After that, he already defeated. Okay, if that happens, which seems like that's kind of where things are going, because the Ukrainians are losing ground and there are mass desertions. There's a whole bunch of problems they're facing.
Hmm.
Even though they're very brave. They fought bravely for this past year. I mean, it's almost incredible
Yeah, held off all this
how they
time.
held off all this. Like, it's very courageous. But the problem is just the sheer size, of the army in comparison, and the logistics and everything else. It seems like Russia will at least get some part of their vision complete, right? That just seems what the trajectory is going. Without huge amount of support from the Western world, like, Ukraine is not going to be able to revert meaning from the Russian perspective, they will control what they control, and they're gonna basically topple the Zelensky government, saying you guys must have election again. But obviously they're gonna support a
Yeah.
candidate that support Russia. So that's it. Meaning you have a puppet state in Ukraine
Yeah.
and you're militarily, economically depleted. The Europeans are not gonna help you. They're not gonna spend that money, whatever. And so basically you deplete the entire country of Ukraine and you will never rise again because the most important thing is population. Most of the military age male are being wounded or killed or left the country. How are you going to rebuild? This is what happened to Russia after World War II. There's a huge amount of deficit in male population. They were having so much problem with that because the demographic just forever affected by it. Ukraine are not going to be able to come back from this no matter what for the next 50 to 100 years. So this effectively in Putin's mind, that's how I think is what he's thinking. Is like, this is complete the quest. Like, yeah, I don't need the land. I don't need the actual, rest of Ukraine. I just need
for it to not be a problem.
For not to be a problem, right? This will not be a problem ever for at least for a while, because the thing is, the Europeans were always been pushing the NATO agenda of like moving more east, having more military installation in Poland, in Ukraine. They want Ukraine to be the border, right? So they keep pushing it in that sense. So Russia was more like, well, we constantly were warning you not to do this. And Russia was even thinking of joining the EU, but then got rejected. So basically, as Russia, you're like, hey, can I play in the playground with all of you? No, right? So you constantly try, hey, I want to join this club. I want to join this club, right? Let's all play together. Like, I'm not the Soviet Union anymore. I'm not the bad guy. I'm a new country. No. So eventually, Putin just figured, well, that's not going to work. So we can't join the West, and they keep pushing their NATO agenda east, stalling. There are color revolutions. So they want to install leaderships in Eastern Europe that supports the West and oppose Russia.
Yeah. Lots of shady stuff.
Lots of shady stuff going on. And so I suppose for Putin, during the whole thing at the beginning, they're like, okay, this is the only card I have left. And I'm already old enough, too old. I need to finish this.
Yeah. Like the decision points come up. It's like in a project where you can see, if you have like all the tasks structured and laid up, you can create dependencies among them. So if you say like, okay, this has to be completed before the next one starts, you can link all of them up that way. And this way you see the overall, like how long at least it will take the project to complete. Well, there comes a point, a few months into the project where you can see that this timeline is just expanding and extending and extending because things never go... Yeah, and that things never go according to plan. You learn that something else needs to happen. There's more dependencies, etc., etc. So there comes a point where the timeline becomes so huge that everybody, all the stakeholders, have to like acknowledge it and like have to make a drastic change. Either where it's cutting scope or where changing the budget or where, something has to go. It's kind of like that. Everything reaches a critical point where you already know, you see where things are going. And if you just allow things to go in that direction without changing anything, you're going to arrive at a shit show. It's kind of like that. So I think conflict starts in a similar way where just, there's a realization, all right, if this continues in this direction, in this trend, we're going to be in a far worse situation than, like we have to fight for it, essentially. We literally have to make our stand because otherwise we'll get destroyed. It's kind of that. That's how I see it.
Yeah, so obviously, the Ukrainians they feel every right to defend their own country. Of course, that's why they're fighting so heroically, trying to save the country, right? That's any, I don't know, people from a certain culture or country, like, yeah, that's what they will do, right? And we can understand that. But the problem is the reality sometimes is not as
That's where it gets tricky because you can evaluate it from all these different perspectives, but you have to be a sober and realist about just how the world is and how things unfold. Because surely you can make predictions, it's kind of like chess. You can see if things move this way and these people have these type of resources and they have these type of agendas and they've demonstrated these things historically. You can understand how things may unfold. Like probabilistically, some things will
Right.
be more probable than others. And you
So,
can base your decisions based on that.
a lot of people are criticizing Zelensky for not coming to the table. And part of the
Right.
reason is also the West doesn't allow him to do it. Because there's so many times when,
So many strings attached
yeah,
everywhere.
so many times Russia was like, let's have peace. Okay. I have my demand. But if as long as we can, because Russia was trying to have these talks, right? Be like, okay, can we decide this diplomatically? I show my hand because you guys give me no other choice but to, in Russia's perspective, it's like we got no other choice but to do this militarily. But I can talk peace if you can reach a term. So as the war progresses, Ukraine keeps saying no, and so more and more Russia are gaining more kind of leverage because they're actually taking actual land. So now the term changes. Before they were like, hey, we're wanting to respect the 1990 borders. We'll retreat. We'll go back. We'll give you back all the lands, but you must agree certain terms. But they rejected it. And now the Russians are already controlling this half of the Dnieper River, more or less. Now the term is we get to control these parts. You are not going to get that
It's
back
worsening.
anymore. This is why a lot of people are saying, well, if the Ukrainian government or whoever control the government actually care about the nation, they would have signed some kind of peace deal right away because they know this is not
Right.
going to last. There's no way that militarily
Costs
speaking,
real Ukrainian lives.
right, it's more people getting killed. The economy is again ruined. So the sooner they stop this, yes, it does not feel great, but at least you get to save your country, right? But now it's getting worse and worse because more people are dying. And this is not great for Russia as well, in certain respects, because people are also dying on the battlefield.
Yeah.
That's also not great.
It's costing lots of money, etc. So
Right. It's forcing Russia to look east to
it's
China.
a lose-lose situation.
It is yeah, but at least I guess in Putin's head, this has to be done somehow. The calculus makes sense in his head, I guess. That's why he's willing to gamble, essentially, like use all these resources and manpower to do this thing. But who knows how far it's gonna go? It's already been so many years, and it's just like its progress very slow. Meaning the Ukrainians are doing a good job of holding the tide back, but they don't have infinite resource, so it's I don't know.
Yeah. Hopefully it ends soon.
Yeah, so that people can go back to, like I don't know, like look,
So we can go back to the next war.
you know what?
This podcast took a dark turn
I
in this
know, but
episode
sometimes it do
because
be like that, right?
now
I
we're
mean,
looking at the
you gotta
real
face
situations in the real world.
the reality sometimes. But like, look, this could have been otherwise, because one could imagine, okay, the Ukraine was actually in a kind of an interesting position because they can play both sides if they didn't develop the way they did. Because you see, the pipeline goes through Ukraine to Europe. So if somehow they have some way to kind of play both sides, they would have benefited. So they could be like, okay, we're not gonna allow NATO to set foot in our country.
Right,
I promise
exactly.
Russia,
Would be a smarter way.
we're gonna be neutral. But somehow, because the leadership was not able to face the pressure from the West, they capitulated. Basically, they're saying we'll do what you like. We'll join NATO
Because of money.
because of money. So yes, it's corruption. Right now, it came out. Right,
Corruption.
there's a big corruption case in the Ukrainian government of siphoning funds that was supposed coming in the aid for the fighting. They're not using it to build the defense or whatever.
Big surprise.
They took the money. So how is this protecting the people, right? Like you're not even actively defending. So it's all political showmanship, which is what happened right now in Pokrovsk. They could have retreated the forces there, but instead they allowed them to be encircled and basically get destroyed. So now this news came out. There's a huge desertion, like that whole pocket. Like there's a huge amount of people they gave up. It's like these Ukrainian forces are like, our own people don't care about us. They want us to die for nothing. Like we're
terrible
not
for the morale.
because you should supposed to pull these people back to have a better fighting position, to have a better, but you just left them there. It's saying this is almost like back to the USSR, like kind of no one step back,
Right.
right? Like you will die, rather die than you should be dead than retreat, which does not make much sense, like militarily, because you want to save these fighting forces. You barely have any left. Like you're so depleted, right? You need these people who have the war experience as the frontline troop. You need to pull them back because you know this is lost. You're already encircled. There's no way for you to win this situation, but they're so
Right.
stubborn.
Indefensible position.
They essentially tell their troops, like, you're going to die for this, for nothing. That's why they deserted. Of course they would. Why wouldn't they? It's like they're not going to die for nothing. Like if they die defending like an important site, they wanted to make that sacrifice. But if your superior tell you like, oh, it's pointless, you guys are all gonna die, but you're gonna die anyway, so just die.
Yeah.
Like, right?
Nobody wants that.
So that's just what happens. I mean, nobody understands why the government, Ukrainian government, keep doing this. All they're like, it's all blunders militarily. They keep doing these things, just throwing a man to the meat grinder for no reason other than political kind of like, oh, we did this, oh, we were here, we were
Well, they're
trying to
probably
fight.
trying to hold the front while they're securing the support, right? They're still hoping that
Well,
they can get some
yes, there's
support
that,
from the world.
but they're losing ground like really rapidly. Like before, a couple of years back, they were okay. Like they were holding the Russians back. Now they're like the Russians are making gains like really, really fast. And then it's just also just the brutality of the modern war because of drones. Man,
Yeah.
it's crazy, man. Like I think nobody preferred this way. It's just like rather just I think people, if people were to die in war, they would rather not by drones. They would rather it be like face to
Yeah,
face.
it creates too unbalanced of a disadvantage against essentially against humans because you don't even you're not fighting the person anymore. You're literally it's future. It's the
It's
future warfare.
it's
It's
the
crazy. It's
machine. Yeah.
never happened like this before.
And then it's so hard to, they're so small and they fight so fast that a lot of
Yeah.
times you get caught, you just get caught. You have no
Yeah.
way to fight back. And without proper technology to kind of destroy drones, yeah, it's definitely terrible. Like it's terrible to be anywhere near that part of the world right now.
Right.
In that field of battle, I can't imagine how, on both sides. It's nobody asked for this, right? It's like, yeah, your country's leader asked for it, but you have to do this. It's sometimes it do be like that, man. I mean, it's like this is
And on this shitty note, we're gonna have to wrap it up. We've been going on for a few hours
yeah.
already.
Hey, it's dark, but
Yeah, but it's kind of gave me a few ideas of what to explore next. I kind of do want to delve into the nature of this just just conflict, corruption, greed, because the roots of all of that, it's the root of all evil essentially. So it would be interesting to dig into that and see where it stems from and how things can be without it.
yeah. I mean, it would be interesting question to kind of ask, like, can we not have it? That's the question. Or is this something more fundamental to kind of
Exactly. Yeah,
human
that's what I
reality?
was thinking.
You know?
So we'll explore that next time.